series, the World of Fictionkins. Basically, the lore for the world is that long ago, there were 5 gods. Each god to bless the land with something, and it is our mission to find specifically the 5 dragons of those worlds. Yes. And also the kins are referred to people because there are many different people in this. There are many different types of people because by types of people I mean they're half human, half animal, or like half human, half monster. There's gonna be there's many types of them, and I am a bird one, so a bird kid. I won't be talking for the entire. I will be talking for the entire VOD / video, but I will not be talking for all of it because I don't think I can. That my voice getting very dry. So that's why I have. That's why I have something to put in the background. I'm taking secret doors. All dragon behavior pack. All wood. Sparkle pets. Another furniture. Magic spells. Yeah, this is probably gonna be a lot of it. So dang it. If this saves, I will need to delete one of my apps. Oh, also we need gravestone that on it. That's just needed. So let's start.
Felt tale of the weakest
Use the reprint. Okay.
tamer began a journey to pick up trash. So let's get started and watch the story unfold. We see Ivy as she runs into the forest. She sets up pots and pans to clang in the trees when someone comes by. She pulls some hidden bags out from a secret area that only she knows about and stares with a look of wonder as they get sucked into one of the bags. She straps all the bags onto herself and packs in other various items. As she walks out with all of her wares, she says to herself she gave up on happiness a long time ago, being an unwanted child who was cast away by her parents. She tries to test the blade she's holding, but ends up tumbling and rolling backwards. If only she had important skills like running or hiding, but if she did, then of course, none of this would have happened to her in the first place. She wonders if she had done something in her past life to have been cursed so badly in this one. She slides down the hill, happy to find a dumping ground.
And next, and since it loaded in, we need to delete something. I don't. Foster dog, master can. I'll delete YouTube music. Remove app. Delete app. I think I'll be good with that. It's still lagging then.
On a bag handle from the dumpster to almost get pierced by several thrown away spears. Inside of a bag, she's delighted to find a new jacket and a mat that might make her journey easier. But even with the positive outlook, she has intrusive thoughts to remind her she's just an unwanted child living off of trash like a hobo. Ivy then sees a man who is a monster tamer. He whistles to call in slimes to feed on the trash, and as she watches them melt the garbage away, she wonders if her past life would have thought of monsters as cute. She runs away to hide as the man comes towards the back of the dumpster. She stares completely frightened as the man mentions there's a bounty on this little girl's head, where the head of her village wants her back dead or alive. She flees further, having restless nights, and while crossing a marsh, a strong gust blows and she finds dozens of slimes jumping around her. She runs away with them chasing after, She makes it to the forest and stumbles backwards with more slimes appearing before her, falling down a cliff with her fall broken by the branches of a large tree. She heals herself with some potions, hoping the chase on her has ended. She then makes it to some beautiful stream water, where she dives in to bathe. Afterwards, she cuts her hair and puts on clothes to disguise herself as a boy, staring out into the water, ready to begin her new life. She comes upon a tiny slime on a leaf that she actually finds cute. Then, when she goes through her monster compendium, it turns out to be extremely rare, only being known as the weakest slime with a disintegrating existence. She can't help but rejoice because the slime is just as weak and useless as she is. Finally, someone for her to relate to. A small breeze blows, dragging the small slime away, and looking at the compendium again, Ivy learns the slime can disappear from even a heavier gust or even the slightest touch, as she stares at it being stuck or merely being put upside down. Ivy gently puts the slime right side up using both her hands, and learns from the book that it's likely this slime will die within a day, making the slime very sad. Then, the wind blows a blade of grass that knocks over the weak, useless slime, and Ivy chases after it, barely catching the slime before it falls in the water. She then spends her time with the slime, as much as possible before its inevitable disintegration. She talks to it, mentioning her thoughts on how gods don't play fair. They make people who are happy, but also people who are miserable, like her and this slime. The humans in this world, known as Ordogas, all receive skills when they turn 5 years old. Her father has 2-star carpentry skills. Her mother has 2-star needlework and 1-star mending skills. However, no one knows what kind of skills they receive or how many stars they'll be in value until they appear. But everyone's future is decided by those skills and the number of stars. At the age of 5, Ivy received the taming skill, which is the ability to tame monsters and win them over. But sadly, she was born starless, a tamer who cannot tame a single monster, useless and outcasted by society. And her family, they stopped giving her food and a house to sleep in. She slowly found herself with no place to belong. However, she does have one thing that others don't: memories of her past life. She's apparently a human who was reincarnated here from a different world, but most of the memories come hazy and tend not to be of much use either. They often even whisper things to her she doesn't quite understand, like proverbs. The only person who is still nice to Ivy, fortune tellers that taught her many different things, and even this magic bag that can store many items. But unfortunately, the fortune teller died recently, so there's no one left in this world for Ivy, and everyone from the village is trying to find and kill her, even though she had done nothing wrong. Is being starless that bad? Is it something that she should truly be hated for? Is the world rejecting Ivy's very existence? She then stares at the slime, remarking on how it's fated to disappear within a single day. The world just isn't fair. The next morning, she wakes up, scurrying to find the little slime, saddened by the only thing she could relate to, disappearing. Even though she thought she was used to being lonely, she couldn't help but tear up. She starts going through her bags, remembering how the fortune teller told her to march towards the royal capital. Then, when she checks her map, she's relieved to find the slime still alive. She learns from her compendium that in order to tame a monster, she must first give it some of her magical energy. If the monster accepts it, it'll begin to glow, and the monster must then receive a name during that phase. She wonders if she can really do this, being starless and all. She then imbues the slime with magic and gives it the name Sora, meaning sky, to represent the blue sky above her. With the name being a success, she's excited to journey with her cute little friend, embracing her own name of Ivy, the plant that thrives even when it's stomped on. The next day, a mouse wanders in a little contraption. It's the 10th one that Ivy's caught. She's overjoyed to have field mice for a meal tonight. She wraps the mice in some leaves and stores them in her bag for later. She points on her map to where she currently is, the area of her hometown, Latomi Village, and notes that the royal capital is way further on the left past this map, so she wants to stop in the town of Tola before the map cuts off. She has to catch Sora again before the breeze blows him away. She then gets startled by some scurrying and decides to run up a tree to hide. And she's horrified to see a large herd of huge ants, but they don't notice her at all. After they leave, she holds up Sora, wondering if he seems a little bigger. And after noticing she's got a cut on her cheek, she heals herself with some potions, but can't help but think that she should have more potions, and wonders where the rest went. As she wanders, she sees a wanted poster with her face on it. She notices the reward is 500 Dao, which is a big reward where they're from. She wonders why she could be worth so much. Then her past self whispers that it's because she's a wanted fugitive, which doesn't make Ivy any happier since it makes her sound like a villain. She goes to take a second wanted poster down, and is flabbergasted to see their ugly depiction of her, and it makes her pretty mad, so she rips it up. However, when seeing her beautified one, she remarks, "Yeah, this one? It's probably me." But somehow, it seems Sora may disagree. They finally arrive in the next town, with Ivy feeling a little envious over all the townsfolk and their everyday magic. She sees a butcher shop and thinks about selling her field mice for some cash. She gets nervous and decides to walk away, but the butcher comes over as he can smell the mice due to his own level 2 odor skill. He has Ivy show him the mice and is excited over the fresh cuts of meat. He buys them for 100 dao, explaining that most people are bringing him bigger game these days, so he'd be happy to buy the smaller meats from Ivy at any time. With a pocket full of cash, Ivy gets a little hungry looking at the bread shop, but she's too nervous so she walks away at first. But then she comes back, with the shop owner asking what she would like to buy. Ivy asks what she can afford with 100 dao, as it turns out she's never used money before. So the owner explains Ivy could buy the entire shelf of bread with 100 dao. She then decides to buy a couple things and takes off happily with the delicious treats. That evening, she sits atop a tree, very eager to eat. Then, she splits off half for Sora. As she enjoys herself, she learns that Sora can't eat the bread, but she can't comprehend what he might like eating at all. The next day, she is overjoyed to find a mound of trash. She comes upon baskets of potions, but they're all expired and discolored. But when she sets them down, Sora finds a use by absorbing the potion bottles whole. This surprises Ivy because absorbing inorganic material is usually a skill only held by high-level, rare slimes. She decides to test this with another piece of trash, but it seems Sora is only interested in potion bottles. But not red ones, just blue potion. They continue their days in the village, with Ivy bringing more mice meat to the butcher to make money and buying more bread to enjoy, then bathing in the nearby river every day. As they eat their meals for the day, Ivy wishes she could stay in the village forever. The people here treat her nice, unlike the memories of her father who discarded her like the trash she's become more endearing of. The next day, she heads into the village, and when she sees some adventurers, she thinks of the man who was hunting her for a bounty, and she runs away. She runs past the butcher, who is eager to buy some mice, but she becomes frightened to see her wanted poster on the shop's stall. She then runs to the bread shop, where the bread lady baked her favorite bread to give her some. However, Ivy runs away again, feeling worse after seeing a second poster. She cries that night, because she knows she must leave the village that's been treating her so well, and embraces Sora, who keeps her company while she sleeps. The next day, when she ventures out, she comes to cross...
Sorry, lagging? Again. God damn it. Okay, so I'm gonna kill this guy, that's the plan, and I want to get some leads so I can take the hamster. I don't like the chameleon. I just want the hamster. Oh, that's a fucking forest dragon. Holy sh... Ren, that thing is dangerous. That thing is very hostile. Holy sh... Fuck the chameleon, okay.
Roads, unsure of where to go. She decides to go grab a bite to eat, since she was too scared to pick up supplies in the town. She's delighted to come upon a golden apple tree, but now isn't so happy to see it's a monster that feasts on adventurers. Ivy tries to flee, but scrapes by with a vicious attack on her wrist. Then, with Ivy lying on the ground, ready to pass out from the pain, Sora begins to light up, and Ivy can't help but think, that's right, slimes eat people as well. We see a man carving wood. He hears a baby crying, so runs upstairs to the midwife holding their healthy little baby girl. The man's wife, Fulfei, asks him what name he should give her. He responds, Famisha, as the baby giggles, embraced by the love of the mother at her bedside. A few years later, Famisha would grow into a kind and wonderful girl, bringing her father and older brother lunch as they worked hard for their family. As the three enjoyed their tasty bread lunch, Famisha nearly...
See that Siamese cat? Come to me, baby. Come to me, child. Me love you, child. Me love you. Yeesh. You mine now. Got a Siamese cat and a hamster. I will protect you. I need to get some tools. Oh.
claiming it's because she's a growing girl, which caused her father to laugh. His family brought him so much joy. That evening, Famisha would come home to her mother and older sister, Vasila, preparing dinner. Her brother, Phaeton, teased her for saying she better start being able to use everyday magic. So Famisha retorted that she'll definitely be able to soon, with her mother gently reminding her that everyone develops at their own pace. And even without magic, Famisha is already admirably helping out as much as she can. However, Vasila comments that's not what their mom said to her when she was 4 years old. She was being told by their mother every day to hurry up and be able to use magic already, with the mother replying implying, huh? Is that really how it was? Parents, am I right? Dinner is set for the family to enjoy.
Correct, that
A
is
big
true.
stew was the main course. The father proudly explains that since Priscilla has the soothing skill, the food is enhanced with the ability to cure fatigue. Then the family enjoys their peaceful dinner together. The family continues to work on things throughout the evening. The father mentions the house he'd been building should be finished by the end of the month, but he couldn't complete it without his lovely family that was truly blessed in this world. Their son Phaeton made the furniture with his 3-star furniture making skills, and the mother helped with the furniture cushions using her 2-star sewing skills. Their family was truly blessed with talent for the homemaking business. As the mother worked, a tear came to her eye, which startled Phoenicia. Turns out, the mother had been stitching bridal wear for the shoemaker's daughter, and this made her realize that Phoenicia and her older sister Priscilla will be married off someday too. Priscilla is eager to have a beautiful dress, while the father says it's too soon. But no, the mother knows the time always comes faster than you'd expect. After all, Phoenicia is almost 5 years old, which makes Phoenicia excited for birthday presents. However, there's something even more important coming that day: her skill. The father remarks that as long as a person has a skill, they'll always find a place to work. The mother adds, what sort of skill and how many stars? No one knows until they receive their skills from the gods. The type of skill and number of stars will determine where you work, where someone like the older brother Phaeton, who has 3-star skills, is highly desired, unlike Priscilla, who is only 1 star, which he constantly teases her for. The mother then asks Phoenicia what skill she'd like. From very early on, Phoenicia had always wanted to be a tamer, to befriend dragons, griffins, and all sorts of monsters, causing her brother to laugh as he felt her reasoning to be ridiculous. The father reminded Phoenicia that skills are bestowed by the gods so its people can live in this world, causing Phoenicia to pout, since he also told her it's not for her to make friends with monsters. However, he handed her a horse he made with his 2-star carpentry skills in order to cheer her up. The family hears a knock on the door. Who could it be at this hour? Turns out, it's Mistress Luba, the fortune teller. She showed up because it's nearly time for Phoenicia to be gifted with her skill, and has come to offer prayer of good fortune. The fortune teller then thinks back to when Phoenicia was much younger. The mother had been concerned because Phoenicia started speaking incredibly well since the age of 2, and that sometimes Phoenicia would say strange things. The mother couldn't help but feel concerned, wondering if her daughter would be able to use magic someday. Phoenicia then suddenly burst out, "Magic? This world has magic?" Something that Luba affirms to little Phoenicia. Phoenicia jumps with joy, then says, "What? Reincarnated into another world?" which leaves the mother concerned over the strange words her daughter had just spoken. Luba then reassures the mother, it's fine. Phoenicia will grow into a very intelligent child. Luba then makes an excuse so the mother can step away for a second. That way, she can privately inquire about Phoenicia. She tells Phoenicia that if people learn she has memories of her past life, things will become difficult for her, so she mustn't tell anyone about them.
Shit, the Siamese cat. Unleash, I only care for the Siamese cat. Where? Third. Siamese, come here, please. Please, child. What the hell is this? What is that? What the fuck is that? Where is it going? I want it to eat me. I need to look through these guidebook.
She must keep it a secret, even from her own mother. Back in the present, Luba tells the family Phoenicia is sure to be gifted with a wonderful skill. Priscilla wonders if foresight tells Luba what skill Phoenicia will get. However, with Luba's skill being only 1 star, she can't see quite that far. Phaeton then mocks Luba's 1 star, causing the father to scold his bratty son. After all, without her predictions, the village wouldn't know when they'd be able to harvest the Zaro fruit. We finally reach the day of Phoenicia's 5th birthday. Her parents sit with her, as the village priest says to them, today is the day to receive her blessings from God. Blessings that will grant her the joy of hard work, happiness at the wonder of living, and divine protection of truth. Phoenicia walks up to touch the sacred water. Then the priest uses his magic to receive the divine message. Phoenicia is blessed with the tamer skill, the ability to win monsters over to her, which got both her and her parents excited. This was going exactly how Phoenicia wished. However, this dream would become a nightmare nightmare, as the priest gave a very disturbed look at the reading. The water burst before them, meaning this child possesses a starless tamer skill. Her parents protested. Her father shouted, "This must be some kind of mistake. My daughter couldn't possibly be starless." But the priest assured him, this is a divine message. Mistakes simply aren't possible, and that any further talk like this is blasphemy. As the priest walked away, muttering under his breath that this girl has been abandoned by the gods, Famisha hears a whisper from her past life, saying, "This is an impossibly hard mode video game." Back at home, the family sits completely depressed and disheveled. The father slams the table, having been drinking non-stop. The mother tells him he's had too much, but he ignores her, wondering how this could all have possibly happened. Both him and his wife have stars. Their oldest son and daughter have stars. Why does Famisha have none? Famisha tries to ask him something, but he shouts back at her, telling her not to speak because the starless have been abandoned by the gods. He truly questioned how a starless could be born in his family, which made Famisha stare in disbelief, with the man before her no longer having the love and warmth provided she had always known. Fulfe tells him he's going too far as he quickly gets up. He grabs the wooden horse he gave to Famisha and slams it on the ground, shouting, "What's the point of being a tamer if she has no stars?" He wonders if Famisha is even really his daughter, and with these harsh words, Fulfe falls to the ground in tears. Famisha tries to console her mother, but Phaeton grabs her, shouting not to touch his mom. Famisha tries to ask her older sister for help, but Facilla only gives her a nasty look, with Famisha screaming that her brother is hurting her, begging him to stop. He throws her on the ground and yells at her to get out. She looks back at him.
I hate plain white beds, which is why I'm going to sleep in a red bed. Anyways, it's the only flower I saw that I actually like, because the others give white. I hate white. We should start on a building. We should start on building a base.
Completely lost in everything that's transpired. But then she runs out the door. Famisha then walks through the village like a lifeless zombie, all while the villagers speak in hushed whispers about the starless child abandoned by God. The village head announces the appearance of a starless to be a horrible omen of disaster. He tells the villagers they must prepare against the misfortunes and devote their abilities to the good of the village. As Famisha watches them, the other kids in the village throw rocks at her, causing her to bleed. She runs, only to be faced with more villagers staring at her with hateful eyes. She ran all night through a forest to get away from them, wondering why this was happening, until she tripped. She can't go home anymore. Her past self whispers there's going to be a witch hunt, which makes Famisha clench her fists as it rains. She says to herself she's not a witch. As she wanders in the rain depressed and cold, she thinks to herself she's getting hungry too. She comes across some berries and eats what she can, but still shivers from the sopping cold. She breaks a stick and tries to use magic for the first time to make a fire, but it goes out. As she tries to light it a second time, she suddenly passes. She wakes up to the fortune teller who helped warm her with the fire and prepared food to eat. Luba tells Famisha it seems she has less magical energy than most people, and that if she ever runs out, it will put her life at risk. She then tells Famisha that her foresight skill showed this was going to happen to her, just not the way it was going to happen. But she never imagined Famisha to be starless, as she hands food over for Famisha to enjoy. After dinner, she hands a magic bag to Famisha, and even though it's an older model, it will still be able to fit a lot of things in it, and also books with knowledge about various useful things. Luba then says Famisha is destined to take a journey to see the world and broaden her perspective.
Okay, I will pause this occasionally. Okay, we need to kill the cows, so we could probably get leather and maybe even make some armor. Or we could get food. Food is good too. Some leather, good. Where are the horses? I'm sorry, but the horses also need to die. They have food. Well, not food, they have leather. Leather is good. We need to safe-proof this, because Siamese cats are a bit weird. I'll get some
That she must head to a town neighboring the royal capital and find people that she can trust, and that when she does, she must tell them everything, even that she's a starless. That way, she can find true friends who will accept her no matter what. As Famisha learns various skills from Luba, she asks why Luba doesn't hate her like the rest of the village. Luba explains that long ago, no one had skills or stars, but still worked and lived happily. so not having skills isn't a bad thing, even though she
Yeah,
doesn't
I
know how
know!
things ended up like this. 3 years later,
Yeah,
we
I
find Famisha
know!
in front of a huge trash pile. She wonders if the planks are left over from her older brother Feton's furniture making, storing some away to use for firewood later. She then stares at some potions, which are used, but still enough to be stored away for later. She got a huge haul today. She catches a mouse and enjoys a skewer from it afterwards. She thinks it's been a while since she'd last seen the fortune teller and wonders what she's doing. She then senses the presence of people coming and puts her fire out and hides to see 2 men from the village. She has a bad feeling and wants to know why people are coming after her, so she decides to spy on them in town. She hears 2 women talk about how it was a shame that Luba had died from sickness recently, which surprised her. She sees her father report to the village head that he still hasn't been able to find Famisha, and the village head remarks that Famisha must have caught wind of what they were trying to do. The head tells Famisha's father that starless only bring misfortune, and her father agrees, saying starless should not be allowed to exist in this world. This broke her emotionally, hearing the words from the same man that used to love her, causing her to fall into despair. She even imagines her mother saying it would have been better if she'd never been born. The head of the village talks about the sad loss of their village fortune teller, saying,
Well, at least I don't have to imagine that. I don't have to imagine that. Because my mother... Okay, sorry, sorry, it's a dark joke. I like dark jokes. I don't have to imagine that. I'm a fucking disappointment. We are safe proving it for the Siamese cat, because the Siamese is my cat now. Perhaps kidnapped, but it's still my cat.
and the cause of her death was none other than the curse of the Starless, and that because Luba ignored his warnings and looked after Famisha, she also became forsaken by the gods. They cannot afford to leave Famisha unchecked, as their village will one day be struck by calamity, and then he commands them all to capture and kill her. Famisha shrunk in fear at the harsh bounty being placed on her life. She ran as the villagers chased after her, with her mother restraining her. As her father delivered the finishing blow, she woke up under the stars, remembering that Sora was going to eat her. She then stares back at the sky and peacefully accepts her fate, because she's an unwanted child anyways. Next, she finds herself awakened by Sora nudging her. He bounces on top of her, and that's when Famisha notices her wound is completely healed. She thanks him, as she learned he wasn't trying to eat her. He was actually just healing her, and this is when he began to speak. So Famisha rejoices and laughs at her little slime that can only say, "Poo-poo?" She may be an unwanted child, but none of that matters, as long as she has him. So maybe she'll decide to live just a little longer. Another day comes, and we see Ivy resting peacefully. A droplet of morning dew falls and hits Sora, waking him up. He spams his poo-poo phrase over and over again, like an alarm clock, so Ivy grabs him to turn him off. Of course, she would have no idea what that even is in this world, but her past life does. She pets the energetic little Sora on this fine morning, and she cheers, eager for the two of them to continue their journey. Berries and blue potions. Ivy prays to say gratitude for the fine morning meal. The two enjoy themselves, but Ivy is surprised at how much energy her little slime seems to have now. She grabs him close and remarks on how much sturdier he is than before. Is this really the same disintegrating slime that she knew? Maybe he's grown after consuming all of those blue potions. Well, none of that really matters, as long as he's healthy. Ivy begins to think about the next village they'll be entering. She's been low on meat supplies since leaving the last village, so she'll need to hunt more mice to sell. But her past self tells her if she cooks the mice she catches, she'll actually save more money. Which would be a good idea, except the smell of food would eventually attract monsters. So even with a higher cost, buying dry meat from the store is safer. Then suddenly, Sora keeps shouting his phrase over and over. He's finished all the potions and he wants even more, leaving Ivy to wonder what she's going to do. Well, if you were all wondering what's next, allow me to remind you the name of the...
Go finish the stream.
I need you. I need you every single day and I want you.
anime. Ivy is excited to find a large pile since she was too scared to pick up supplies in the town. She's delighted to come upon a golden apple tree, but now isn't so happy to see it's a monster that feeds. She mustn't tell any village. It can carry 3 giant flute that
There.
Ivy pats him to make him stop. However, she gets upset with herself waking up to find Sora had already eaten all of her potions. She nabs some mice in a mousetrap. Just kidding, she accidentally catches a big snake. She's reluctant to deal with it, but she knows it might still fetch her some money if she sells it. So she grabs a cloth from her magic bag and covers the snake, confining it with a knot. Walking through a path, she smells something burning, while Sora freaks out over it. She's curious as to what it is, and decides to check it out, only to see a caravan that had been completely wrecked by some bandits. She decides to hide Sora in her bag, and when she looks in further, she's horrified to find some men who'd been bloodied and battered. No way bandits would do this. This had to be the work of monsters. Ivy decides to make a run for it, until she's far away, panting and completely out of breath. She spots Letum and makes her way into town. And even though she's safe now, she feels like she has to tell someone. She spots the sign for a town hall, and even though she's nervous, she enters. The people from town hall ask the little boy, Ivy, what she's got there. She tells them it's a snake she caught, but that's not important. Ivy then tells them about the people she found passed out on the way here, the cart that was on fire, and the people who had been attacked and didn't survive. A man walks up to Ivy to get a better account of what had happened, hoping the attackers were only bandits. But after hearing about how the horses were also killed instead of stolen, he reluctantly agrees it was most likely a monster attack. The man then tells everyone to locate the monsters as soon as possible, and he thanks Ivy, explaining she'll be rewarded as soon as the monsters are found. And the woman explains in this town, people are rewarded for giving monster tip-offs to town hall. It's to give the town countermeasures before people can get hurt. The woman gives Ivy a document to claim her reward once the task has been completed. Ivy then goes to sell the snake she caught, and the buyer tells her it's a rare female and offers to give her 3 giddle. Ivy has to count, and has since learned the value is equivalent to 300 dao, or selling 30 field mice. She walks out happy with her collected money, and now's the time to find food for Sora. She of course heads to another dump, and becomes so happy as she finds over 21 magic bags. She's at first concerned, unsure of how she can carry them all, so she starts trying to fill the magic bags with each other. Then she starts organizing them, with bags on the left unable to carry other magic bags, followed by magic bags that can carry 1 magic bag, then magic bags that can carry 2 magic bags, and all the way on the right, magic bags that can carry 3 magic bags. She eventually finishes organizing them and heads back into town to buy more potions. The man from earlier greets her and thanks her as they were able to verify the monster tip right away. Turns out the monsters were ogres and an ogre king based on the tracks they had found. They ended up sending high-ranked adventurers to go slay them, and no one is to leave the village until the monsters have been defeated. He then tells Ivy to head to town hall and collect her reward. And after handing in her document, the town hall lady hands her over 5 giddle. Oh wow, the snake was worth 3 giddle or 30 mice. At 5 giddle, that's 50 mice's worth. But it's not over, as she's also awarded 2 ladol. 1 ladol is 10 giddle, so altogether she's collected 280 field mice worth of money. Later that night, she chills for the evening, eating berries and feeding Sora in her bag. She'll have to stay in town until the monster hunt is over, but she's happy regardless. With Sora still at her side, she decides to rest for the night. On this nice morning, we turn to Ivy finding one of her rat-catching traps broken, wondering if a bigger animal had stepped on and snapped it. This leaves Ivy concerned that she won't catch anything to sell for money. Her past self reminds Ivy of the tip reward she got for reporting the goblin attack the other day, so she opens her bag thinking she might be okay for a little while, but she'd rather save it for a rainy day. Sora then spots something and begins to move. Ivy has to chase after him. It's faint, but Ivy can also sense something. It's the smell of blood? The two enter past a brush, and Ivy is astonished to see an injured beast. She's unsure of what it is, but senses magical energy within it. She opens her monster compendium and learns it's called an Adondola. It's an incredibly ferocious, rare monster. It growls at Ivy, giving her a little fright, but drops its head down, worn out from all the injuries it has sustained. Ivy gets saddened knowing it's going to die soon. She pets the Adondola, consoling it, telling the monster she was also scared when she was on the precipice of death. She knows she can't do anything for the beast, but promises to stay by its side. However, watching the two's sad interaction, Sora jumps up and envelops the beast in his body. Then his healing properties begin to kick in, and suddenly the Andondola is injury-free. Post-healing, Ivy remarks that Sora talks a little faster now, with his signature phrase. Then the beast stands before them, and even though Ivy is afraid, she has nothing to fear, as the Andondola is a giant floof that caresses her lovingly, which is crazy because according to her book, it takes a team of at least 5 high-ranked adventurers to defeat this ferocious monster. But the big beast smiles warmly as Ivy pets it. As the three begin their stroll together, Ivy wonders if this means she has one more friend now. She pets the beast, saying it's time to name him. She stares at the sunlit sky, and she's got it. Your name is Ciel. It means sky in a different language, but she doesn't quite know how she knew that. She then makes her joyous introductions for her and Sora to Ciel, and the three continue their trek until Ivy senses some people. She decides to hide Sora in her magic bag, but there's no way Ciel is going to fit in there, and it wouldn't be good for people to see him. Ciel displays his intelligence, however, and dashes away to hide in the bushes. She arrives at the gate of the next town and sees the tall guard, who seems a little scary. Even the passing travelers seem to be scary to Ivy as well, with Sora also freaking out for some reason. The traveler tries to enter the town, but the guard stops him, asking what business he has with Latome Village. The traveler tells him he's visiting a friend. However, when the guard asks what the friend's name is, the man nervously responds, Zoliet, but the guard says there's no one in the village by that name. The traveler begins to sweat with even more nervousness, saying, it's Lizola, with the guard clearly not accepting it. The traveler then says, no, it might have been, Maklua, but the guard isn't buying his BS. He throws the traveler against the wall and raises his sword, slashing the traveler's bag to see a magic bag fall out. And in the magic bag, the guard finds illicitly brewed alcohol and grabs the traveler by the neck, and has his fellow guard, Velavera, escort the traveler to jail. Ivy, now realizing the traveler was a bad man, wondered if Sora somehow knew that already, and he answers with his poo-poo-poo as if to confirm. Ivy is still scared of the red-haired guard, wondering if she should just give up on passing through Latome Village. But she knows with the guard staring at her, running away would only be suspicious. She tries to walk through, but freaks out when she gets stopped. The guard, of course, has never seen her before and wants to know who her parents are. She begins to answer, only to see the guard's fearsome glare meeting her, making her face grow pale. Ivy notices a mantis land on his shoulder. However, the glare was all in her head, as we see he has a more relaxed look. She mentions the bug, causing the man to freak out a little and scurry it away, and thanks her once it's off his shoulder. She tries to walk away, but gets stopped again, because the guard isn't done inquiring about her. She tells him she's from Latome Village, and the guard is shocked to hear she came from so far away, but apparently he heard things are quite tough in Latome right now. Ivy has no idea what he means by that, but the guard kneels towards her, reassuring Ivy that now that she's in Latome, she'll be safe, and as long as she becomes an adventurer, she can earn enough to eat. But the only thing she thinks of when walking away is what happened to her home village. She stares in awe at how active this big village is. She heads to the butcher, offering to make a deal for selling field mice and other wild game. The butcher is fine with it, but warns Ivy that if she hunts alone, she might be attacked by Nanoshi monsters. And as she leaves the butcher, Ivy wonders if Nanoshi had actually broken her field mouse traps. She heads to the adventurer's clearing so she can set up a resting space, but gets scared again seeing the big supervisor guard. The guard tells Ivy she'll be safe in this direction, but she needs this permit, otherwise she won't be permitted to come here. Ivy then sets up a resting tarp and crashes on the pleasant feeling ground. Looking in front of her are bigger tents, implying there are mid-level adventurers there, while in her area, the smaller tents imply novice adventurer. Seeing the tents made her wish she had one, since she'd have to worry less about the weather, and of course, she'd be able to let Sora out of the bag. But come to think of it, she still has the tip reward, doesn't she? Ivy heads back into town to do some tent shopping, and finds a second-hand tent shop. She turns from reading the shop sign, and is frightened to see the town guard asking if she's looking for a tent. But he also gets a little startled, and the other guard, Villavera, scolds him, saying not to scare the children, with Ivy telling them she has no tent. The guards wonder if she had gotten driven out of her village with nothing. Then Villavera remarks the difficulties in Latome must be real. The red-haired guard finally introduces introduces himself as Ogto and tells her he's going to take Ivy to a different shop and begins to drag her there. However, after Villavera scolds Ogto for being too rough since he's a much bigger guy, he begins to apologize and Villavera confirms his friend to be dense, but truly a kind-hearted man. So, they head to another tent shop. And when the shop owner hears Ivy is from Lotomi village, he feels sorry for her. She then asks for the price for a tent and wonders if 5 Gedal would be enough, which if y'all remember, it's the equivalent of selling 50 field mice. She tells them she has 2 ladle, which is equivalent to 200 field mice, and everyone is shocked to hear this little boy has so much money. So Ivy explains in the last village, she gave them a monster tip and received this monetary reward as a tip, and everyone commends her on her lucky find. The shop owner then offers this light, sturdy, new model of tent. Afterwards, Ivy marks her tent with a kanji for Sora, but huh? How did she know that? Perhaps it's a memory from her past life. The shop owner then hands Ivy a new model of magic bag. It's special in that whenever Ivy takes something out of it, no one can see what's inside, giving her stuff an extra layer of security.
Wait, holy sh... Sorry, that was a bit of lag. We wait for the lag to stop. We wait.
She then says her farewells to the guard and begins the setup of her wonderful new tent. It seems quite spacious for little Ivy. She pulls out her sleeping little slime and wakes him to see their new tent, causing him to jump around in joy over their new resting conditions. She reflects over the many people that have been so nice to her during her travels, and is happy she was finally able to get something she feels is akin to a house again. She wonders if she's truly deserving of all the good fortune she's come upon, but lets the painful words and treatment from her village go to tell Sora they should celebrate their new tent. So how does Ivy like to celebrate? Well, by going to a trash dump, of course. She heads outside her tent, and a rough-looking guy from a group of adventurers sees Ivy and shows a malicious smile. The group walks over to her, and the big guy accuses Ivy of being a thief, with his buddy saying, "Yeah, it's actually his tent." He then accuses her out loud for stealing his tent, and tells her to give it back. I get what these guys are doing, and I hate them. Ivy affirms she didn't steal it. She bought it herself, of course. But the big guy calls Ivy a liar, and tells her there's no way she could buy this, grabbing a hold of her outfit trying to bully her. And the women shame her for having a terrible upbringing, being such a liar. Ivy tries to run away, and the man grabs her, and shouts at Ivy saying he'll kill her, which brings her to tears. However, the clearing guard comes over to ask what's wrong, telling them that anyone who causes trouble will be charged a fine and thrown out. The rough guy tells the guard that Ivy stole his tent and that they're the victims. But of course, the guard asks where their evidence is. The smug adventurer then says, "Look at the kid. There's no way this little boy could buy a tent like this. It's just common sense." But the guard comes over and seizes the man's hand, freeing Ivy. The guard tells him the tent belongs to the little boy, and even with the adventurer still trying to accuse Ivy, the guard confirms this is an item bought from Old Man Lag's shop, and that Captain Ogto and Vice Captain Bellavera of the Latome Village Watch were the ones that brought Ivy there, making the adventurers shrink back in astonishment as they've been caught. Yeah, you losers are about to get it now. The guy with the bandana gets nervous and says, "Whoops, I must have been mistaken. It's not actually my tent." Then the guard tells the adventurers he'd like to hear their story in more detail and tells them they're going to be detained. But the leader tries to reassure them they just had the wrong idea. However, with the guard cracking his knuckles, it's definitely over for these guys, telling them if they try to run, he'll show no mercy. The adventurers try to split, so the guard whistles, summoning the rest of his team, and now the adventurers are surrounded, with the main guard pinning the bandana adventurer down. The adventurer group leader and one of the girls makes a run for it.
Holy shit, that was fucking scary. The Enderman was scary because I have no loot. Anyway.
with the guards chasing after them. Afterwards, the clearing guard leader checks on Ivy's condition, asking if she's hurt, and Ivy thanks him for saving her. He then hands Ivy a potion as consolation for having to deal with such a scary incident, and she's excited because it's sparkling brand new. So new, the refraction from the sunlight makes the blue shine on her face. The guard then leaves to go interrogate the criminals, and Ivy is happy for how things turned out. Later that night, Ivy celebrates, surrounding Sora and tons of potions. As she's about to eat, she wonders what's wrong, as Sora isn't devouring the potions like usual. But when she realizes he has his sights set on the new potion, she tells him no, because she needs to keep it for herself. He just looks up at her, acting all cute, then begins whining because he really wants it, ending their night peacefully as they argue back and forth about who gets the potion. Another beautiful day comes and Ivy stretches, excited.
It's day 2. It's gonna be day 3 soon, if I'm correct. And the first day goes from there, and my second one to the, yeah, it's day 2. Oh, look at the little Siamese cat. How is he gonna do? Oh, look at the little Siamese cat running around.
For the day. Then looks at little Sora, who's excited for more hunting. She says goodbye to the clearing guard on the way out, and as she exits the city, it seems one guard after another greets Ivy by name, and she seems concerned with each one since she'd never spoken to any of these guys before. Everyone seems to know who she is. Outside the town, it seems a monster had destroyed Ivy's hunting trap again. Oh man, they'll never catch anything at this rate. She then senses an unusual presence. Oh, it's Ciel with several bunnies in his mouth. He sets them down on the ground, making...
Rip the bunnies, rip the bunnies, rip the bunnies. Oh, I thought I was lagging. Oh, it just didn't work. Oh, sorry.
Ivy asks if they're for her, and Ciel growls in an affirming tone. So she thanks him and the two embrace in loving care. Looks like it's 9 rabbits. Ivy is pumped to start dressing them to sell. Over by a creek, Ivy begins to work while Ciel and Sora play. She broke a sweat preparing the little meat pouches. It took long enough for Sora and Ciel to fall asleep. She wakes him up because she still has to sell the meat. Staring at Ciel, Ivy is surprised he's so docile and kind, considering he's supposed to be a rare, dangerous, Adondola monster. He goes in for more pats, and after they say goodbyes for now, Ciel growls like a regular cat. On their way back to town, Ivy tells Sora he looks much stronger now. Before, he used to look like he could disappear at any time, all while he jumps on a stick and tumbles over, getting dizzy, making Ivy remark that his clumsy side hasn't really changed. Ivy heads to the butcher to sell the rabbit meat, and the butcher is pleased since the meat is very fresh and without gamey scent. The butcher is happy because the rabbits must have been caught without taking any organ damage. Ivy replies nervously that she caught them in a trap, leaving the butcher a little curious because the rabbits tend to struggle in traps, which generally degrades the flavor. But of course, Ivy can't divulge into the fact that she tamed a super rare Adondola who caught them for her. The butcher hands over Ivy's payment, and is happy for Ivy to bring over quality meats like this anytime. As Ivy walks, relieved she was able to sell something because of Ciel's work, one of the guards brightly asks if she was able to make some good money today. Another one greets her, asking if she faced any danger against the Noshi monsters. And another asks if she caught a lot of good things to eat. Her voice gets a little worn out, having to deepen it to sound like a boy, so she hides in an alley to avoid any more idle chatter with the guards, until she gets caught by Villavera, who asks her why she's hiding in a place like this. While they walk together, he's realized all the trouble Captain Ogto has caused her. He made the nice gesture of telling the other watchmen that if an adventurer named Ivy is in trouble, be sure to help him out, making sure everyone knew that Ivy was young and hard-working, so fellow guards should look out for him whenever they can. Ogto is a little blockheaded, because when he gets an idea in his head, no one can stop him, but he really means well. Villavera sees Ivy off, as he has other things to do. Ivy continues her walk, sighing as she appreciates the thought of Ogto's gesture, but she doesn't like to stand out. However, with the guards waving at her, she's cheery, thinking this town might be a good place. Something then catches Ivy's attention. It's Zaro fruit, a specialty from her hometown of Latomi, but they're super expensive here. The fruit seller tells her it's taken him a long time to procure these, as Latomi is the only place that can grow these fruits. But with a super bad crop this year, it's been particularly hard to buy them. The man learns Ivy is from Latomi Village and asks where her parents are. But when Ivy explains she's traveling alone, the man remarks it must be that idiot village head's fault. However, Ivy wonders what he means. He explains that fortune teller Luba has always protected the Zaro crops of Latomi Village, as the time of harvesting the fruit was always tricky, because if the timing was missed even by a little, the Zaro fruit wouldn't be good for selling. Zaro fruit is Latomi's main source of income. That's why the villagers loved and respected Mistress Luba. The man heard, however, that the village head couldn't stand that, so when Luba had fallen ill, he hadn't given her any medicine. That's what the people say, anyways. This makes Ivy shocked, thinking back to when she had snuck into the church to hear some women talking about how strange it was that Luba had died of a cold at this time of year. The man also explains there's a rumor the village head is trying to blame it all on a child, making Ivy's face grow dark as she remembers the horrible words the village head proclaimed about her, the starless, cursed child. The man continues on about how with the passing of Luba, Latomi Village's Zaro harvest fell, and they fell into a financial hardship. So the head has been trying to reduce the number of mouths to feed, and that some of the villagers rebelled, took their families, and left the village. Others who defied the head were thrown out, a complete disaster. He then asks why Ivy left, and she explains her parents sided with the head, and that caused problems, clutching her jacket tight at the thought of the horrific betrayal from her family. The man then feels bad for Ivy, so he hands her a Zaro fruit, something that she's thankful for. She sits inside her tent with Sora, reflecting on the events that had happened in Latomi Village. Despite all the mistreatment, she's still worried about what's happened to her family, to which I say, forget him and I hate him. And
okay, so we went to sleep 2 times. One time we went to sleep on the first village meeting, second. Then we went to sleep on the third day. So we're on the 3rd day, and we're pretty good. We're doing pretty fine. We're doing magnific. I don't want to talk to any villagers yet.
I think the deflating Sora agrees with me too. Her family cast her aside, and now she's in an unfamiliar place with people she doesn't know. But now she's finally having fun again. Especially now that she has both Sora and Ciel, Captain Ogto and Villavera. The whole town here in Latome has been so kind to her, and she also still has her past self who speaks to her, and now, even a small home too. She wonders if this is what people call happiness. So Sora bounces up in joy, and as per usual, Ivy has no idea what he's saying. She giggles because she doesn't understand, but in a way she does understand, because they're friends after all. She takes a bite and enjoys the taste of the Zaro fruit, the same as she used to have when she was little, the same flavor that Luba protected. She then thinks of when Luba had told her to head to the town neighboring the royal capital, but if she found a place that she'd like to live in forever while on her journey, she could stay there as well. It's another wonderful day, and Ivy does her usual rounds of good mornings with all the town's watchmen. She heads outside for some good hunting, setting up several traps, being conscious of putting them in places in the know she won't step on. She then heads with Sora to a trash fill because he needs something to eat as well, but suddenly stops because she senses some people, so she has Sora jump in the bag. And oh my god, it's the 2 adventurers who bullied her earlier that escaped. The man blames her for getting his friends arrested the other day, even though they're the ones who bullied her and she didn't really do anything. As Ivy backs away from the approaching thug, he's got a vicious smile, recalling Ivy has a rare slime with her, and tells her if she wants to leave safely, to hand the slime over. Ivy refuses because Sora is her friend, and the girl adventurer tells Ivy that if she doesn't, she'll be going through something more painful. The man stands above Ivy, telling her she's going to be beaten to a pulp, and Ivy stares in fear with the big adults about to thrash her. She makes a run for it, and as the thugs chase after her, she makes a quick left and gets the man caught in one of her traps. The girl adventurer mocks him, and he angrily cuts the rope off himself, exclaiming the boy will not get away alive. The girl then appears in front of Ivy, and the man picks Ivy up, with the mugging about to commence. When Ivy struggles, the girl grabs a hold of her as well, telling her to stop moving, but then the thug girl becomes nervous as they see that Ciel has appeared before them. They put Ivy down and back away at the sight of the majestic Adondola, who's ready to maul their disgusting, disgraceful faces alive. And when Ciel roars, the girl faints, and the man quickly dashes away, while Ciel chases after him. Ciel is so fast, however, catching up to the man was inevitable, and Ciel brings the man back like he's the rabbit prey he had caught earlier. Yeah, that's what you get, you pathetic, worthless, trash human beings. Ciel comes in towards Ivy for head pats. Another day with a job well done. And Ivy stares at the thugs, wondering if Ciel had done this to the rabbits the other day. Ivy senses more people and has Ciel hide. She hears a familiar voice call out, so she calls the voice over to her. It's Captain Octo and Villavera, who check on Ivy to make sure she isn't hurt. While patrolling, they heard a monster's roar and human screams, so they hurried over. Ivy gestures to the two wanted criminals from the other day, leaving Octo and Villavera flabbergasted. At Octo's place, he goes over a report with her about those two adventurers, and apparently they've all been under investigation for other potential crimes they'd committed. They've been stealing money and goods from young adventurers and using false accusations. Several times their crimes had been reported to the Adventurers Guild, but it had been difficult to put together evidence against them. Also, the two they had caught today were specifically wanted for murder, and their punishment will be to now become slaves with no chance of emancipation. I'ma say, serves them right. The other two caught also got sentenced to slavery, but for a shorter.
We are Siamese, if you please. We are Siamese. We are Siamese, if you please. Meow. We are Siamese, if we don't please. Meow. Now look at us, we're Siamese. Meow. Anyways, I'll need some stone, because we still need to flatten out the terrain so we can build a house. Because building a house is first on my list. It's priority number 1. Number 2 priority is actually getting some armor. Oh, yeah, it's a good doggy. Aww. But I'm allergic to dogs. I need a raccoon or a Siamese. Or else I'll sacrificing the Siamese cats. You know I would never do that. You know I'm joking. Never mind, I saw a Siamese cat. Fuck me.
And Ivy is relieved to finally be able to rest easy. Octo brought her here for a particular reason. Since she helped with their capture, she'll be receiving monetary rewards, which shocks Ivy because she's getting paid 2 Liddell and 3 Gadol, and loses her mind realizing she's being paid 2,300 field mice worth. And with all the money she has right now, she's got a net worth of 5,000 field mice. He hands Ivy the money and tells her if she hasn't already, she should go make a bank account. Carrying all this money can be a little dangerous, so they head to the trade guild. That way Ivy can make a deposit, where the banker has...
Give it like a few minutes. I need to go put my plate away. We are Siamese. Hold on. Now let's continue. Days before my birthday. We are Siamese. You know, please ring. I need sanity. Okay.
her sign in a drop of blood. Octo reads her contract and learns Ivy is 8 years and 11 months old, and is shocked to learn she's turning 9 soon. He thought Ivy was 6 or 7, but she exclaims she's not that little. She then deposits her money and receives a plate. Outside, Octo explains with the plate, she can withdraw funds at any trade guild in any village or town. Ivy thanks Octo for all the help, and as he laughs, enjoying himself, Villavera appears angrily as he's been looking for his captain because Octo never said where he was going. Octo looks at him nervously saying, "Oh, didn't I tell you?" But of course he didn't. The three of them walk into the town, and Octo asks if Ivy has ever eaten the town's signature dish yet. It's Nanoshi skewers, something that Octo will treat Ivy to anytime she wants. And she smiles, looking forward to the delicious meal. She gets a head pat from Octo and wonders how long it's been since she was patted on the head. They then head to an eating spot, and when the chef sees Ivy, she jokes, asking if that's Octo's secret child, making him laugh and remark, "Adorable, isn't he?" As they sit down at their table, Ivy stares in awe seeing how big the Nanoshi skewers are. She gets a little nervous hearing Ogto order 10 skewers for each of them, but he claims they're so good it'll be easy to eat this much. However, Villavera knows his captain is going overboard, not considering Ivy's current child build. The food Villavera remarks the chef here is so skilled, anyone at the royal capital would love to eat it as well. And the chef explains she has a 4-star cooking skill, only 1 star under the highest, at 5. Ivy grows a little sad, remembering her own current star ranking. Ogdo then says the 2 criminals they caught today both had 3-star sprinting skills. Definitely why it was so hard to catch them before. He then asks what Ivy's current skill is, and Villavera remarks if her skill is a good fit, she could join the Watchmen here in the future. She sadly explains she's a tamer, and Ogdo thinks it's a wonderful skill. He then asks how many stars, and she gets nervous, shaking at the feeling of having to mention it. Ogdo and Villavera might have caught on to who she is, having fled from Latomi village. So Ogdo pats her and says, sometimes people with a lot of stars are totally useless too. Those thugs from today are a fine example of detriments to society. Villavera agrees, as many people with stars still fail to make use of their skill and end up taking the wrong path in life. It's the job of the Watchmen to keep such people under control. Ivy stares surprised, as Ogdo remarks there are lots of 1-stars who are praiseworthy people, and that Ivy should be proud of all that she's done. By the end of the night, they wave their goodbyes, with her thinking about how she doesn't even have a 1 star. And the next day, she says her goodbyes to the 2 as she plans to continue fulfilling her promise to Luba to head to the town next to the royal capital. Ogdo says anywhere she goes to mention his name, that way she can get by easier. They tell her to come back anytime. Villavera then tells Ogdo the report he got from Latomi village about all the 1-star children, with Ivy being not on the list at all, and the only kid who had fled being a starless 8-year-old girl. And Ogdo scratches his head, knowing that he couldn't unfortunately earn Ivy's trust enough for her to tell him the truth. They both understand how the events in Latomi must have deeply wounded her heart, and hope one day Ivy will be willing to open up to the both of them. It's another wonderful day, with Sora happily bouncing as Ivy chases after him, but he seems somehow faster than he's ever been. After finding a place to rest, Ivy finally sits down for a drink, and Sora comes bouncing with joy, so full of energy. Whatever will she do with him? Ivy's past life reveals Sora must have evolved further after healing Ciel's wounds, but she doesn't know what that really means. Sora spots something and Ivy has to chase after him again, and they find Yamamo plants that have been all dug up, and Ivy gets a little nervous wondering how big the Nanoshi monsters are, falling to the ground at the thought of running from the dangerous boars.
With Kodiak in your back pocket, you can fuel those midday cravings with protein and whole grains in a snap.
Very dangerous.
Let her rip and feel the rest.
That is a very dangerous.
The bushes rustle behind her, increasing the fright. But, oh, it's Ciel, the mighty Adondola beast, that now seems just like a giant floof when Ivy plays sight of Sora enjoying his dinner as well. She thinks about waking up early tomorrow so she can check on the field mice traps. But all is not at peace with the mysterious being watching her from the shadows. She checks her traps, but one after one, there doesn't seem to be a single mouse caught. But there's still meat left over from last night they can enjoy. Ivy then suddenly shivers at a chilling presence, and a black fog appears. Ivy makes a run for it, noting the black fog coming after her makes her feel sick. She eventually makes it to the ledge of a cliff, with nowhere else to run. And when she turns around to see it, she's astonished to find out it's not a monster, but what looks like to be a human causing this. Ciel comes in to give a mighty roar, making the human causing the fog to disappear, but only leaving Ivy with more questions about its origins. Ivy and Sora ride comfortably atop Ciel during their travels, but suddenly Ciel begins to get aggressive. There's an ogre scaling the cliff they're on, and one in front of them as well. Ivy puts Sora in the bag, then Ciel engages one of the ogres in combat, biting its arm and taking the ogre off the cliff into the water. Rocks start to fall above Ivy, and 4 other ogres come crashing down towards her, so she makes a run for it. She makes it into a barren forest, staring in horror wondering why there are so many straw dolls being hung amongst the trees. But she can't stand for too long, as the ogres are catching up. She runs in further, but trips a trap, giving the ogres a chance to surround her. One of the ogres jumps up to attack, but suddenly, fire blasts him away. A man comes in shouting, "Flame, attack!" and creates a burning tornado, with the fire spreading and cooking the ogres alive. The man then proudly says, "Did you see that? That firestorm assault belongs to me, Latra," although now staring nervously seeing Ivy burning up in a trap. He's surprised to see a child trapped up there. Then, an archer scolds Latra, saying he needs to learn to hold back, as he shoots Ivy down with her screaming before Latra catches her. He asks her why she's here, but she doesn't get a chance to answer with an ogre swinging its club above them. They get away, landing on some big bouncy slimes. Cut down the ogres behind them. Latra was just a little surprised by Ivy is all. Another ogre then goes to strike, getting taken down by the arrows of who we now know as Shifal. Shifal scolds Latra for making the traps, since they didn't even catch the ogres. But Latra deflects, saying, "Well, we got rid of them safely anyways." Afterwards, Ivy talks to the suppression squad. They're here because a lot of monsters have settled in this area, and they've been sent here to hunt them. The traps were meant to hunt ogres, but Latra sent the entire area ablaze, so there was little point in using them. They worry if Ivy is hurt at all, so giving her best boy voice impression, she replies, "No sir, I'm alright. Thank you so much for saving me. She doesn't know how to refer to the group, so Latra tells her they are a group of adventurers known as the Blazing Sword. The man with white hair and the big sword is their leader, Sazalk. The man with the red hair and axe is Noga. There's Shifal, the archer of course, Latra, and Mila, known as the Green Gale. Ivy thanks them formally with her hood falling over her, giving everyone a good laugh. As they walk downhill towards their campsite, Shifal asks what she was doing here in the mountains. She tells them she was on her way to Atowa, from where she had just left Latome village. They're surprised to hear she came all the way from Latome here by herself. And we learn from Latra that they're all actually from Atowa. With monsters still being around the area, Sazalk tells Ivy to keep traveling with them because they're heading back to their town anyways. They find their campsite and start heading towards it. However, Ivy finds Ciel, who comes out of the bushes and cleanses herself like a proper cat. Ivy is happy to see Ciel at first, but is concerned that if anyone finds Ciel now, she'll probably be hunted. Ivy warns her cat to go hide, but it looks more like she's playing charades. Ciel just stares, as I'm pretty sure she doesn't understand at all. She eventually walks away, and Ivy takes off with the Blazing Sword group. Back at their campsite, many other adventurers are taking respite here as well, so the campsite has gotten a lot bigger. They've put monster repellent around the perimeter, so there's no fear of being attacked. At the Blazing Sword group's tent, Sazalk tells Ivy she can put her tent next to theirs. The group then heads out for their meeting, leaving Latra behind, who seems pretty nervous. He's nervous because he's on cooking duty tonight, but he's bad at cooking apparently. No matter how hard he tries, people always say that his food tastes strange or it's too gamey, and now he's too scared to cook. Ivy asks what kind of dishes he usually prepares. Despite how he looks, Latra has 3-star flame attack skills, so he grills, he roasts, torching everything in sight, and he seasons with salt and pepper. This somehow only leaves Ivy nervous about his cooking, but she's happy to help him. She sprinkles the wild rabbit meat with herbs to remove the gaminess, and rubs in some salt for seasoning, then cuts the meat into bite-sized pieces to saute them evenly, and adds chopped vegetables to stew them in a pot with meat, adding more herbs here for aroma and flavor. Then, with this mo meat, she adds mildly spicy herbs and fries it in a nice brown color, leaving Latra in awe at the skill of Ivy's cooking. With dinner set, the guys from Blazing Sword awe at the food and sit to enjoy. With just a tiny bite, they begin to tear up, making Ivy nervous that the food isn't to their liking. But no, they were crying in joy over how great it is. Even with the wild rabbit, there isn't a hint of gaminess, and an aroma that is beautiful. Ivy knows that food cooked together with nice smelling leaves at high heat helps remove gaminess from the meat, and wonders if people around here don't know about that. Mila arrives back, ready to enjoy the meal that Ivy made, and blushes at the delicious taste. Nuga almost chokes from eating too quickly. Shifal was worried about leaving Latra in charge of dinner tonight. But wait, did Ivy do all the cooking? Latra nervously tries to defend himself, but Ivy covers him, saying, "They made it together." With his skill adjusting the heat, Ivy was able to cook very well, and to deflect their attention further, he shows off his skillful display of fire magic. And she notes that if they had some variety of metals, the flames could even be more beautiful. So Mila pulls out pieces of broken equipment, and Ivy ties them into a firecracker for Latra to fire. And when he lights it, an array of colors blows above the campsite. a beautiful marvel unseen
It's
before in
not.
this world. Later that night,
Yes.
as Ivy cleans the dishes, Seizel comes over to tell her to take a break, since Ivy cooked for all of them. However, she begs them to let her clean, as a thank you for saving her and escorting her to their camp. Seizel says fine, but he wants to clean up with her, and Latrell falls because Ivy is so adorable and earnest. She really is a sweetheart. Latrell coddles Ivy because he's always wanted a little brother like him, and the rest of the gang comes over to beat him up. Lights out, we see Shafal saddened that little Ivy traveled all the way here by himself. Nuga thinks Ivy is too thin and must not have been eating well. Seizel thinks Ivy is too conscious of others, because Ivy gave an anxious look when being told to rest. And with the happiness Ivy expressed when being allowed to clean, it's as if Ivy has had it in his head that if he isn't useful, he'll be cast aside. All while Latrell lies in his bed hearing them all, he chews on these ideas. But still, the night ends with Ivy and Sora resting peacefully. It's another great morning. Ivy, having rested peacefully at the Blazing Sword camp, goes for her usual trash dump run, discovering some potential breakfast portions for Sora. Some slimes walk by to dissolve some of the trash, meaning there's another monster tamer here. It's Mila, who commands her slimes, Lasto and Lidl, to continue disposing of the trash. Apparently they're rare slimes that have the ability to consume swords, and those who control rare slimes are afforded high social standing, meaning Mila has tons of connections. Ivy asks Mila if she's ever seen a disintegrating slime before, but she hasn't, because it's super rare. If managed to be caught, it could be easily sold for a large sum. Ivy then all of a sudden feels a presence that makes her sick, the same presence she felt when she was being chased by the dark wind. Mila tries to ask her what's wrong, but before Ivy can explain, Latrell comes along with other adventurers to dump their trash. Turns out, those ogres were tough to deal with, so they have tons of weapons that are worn out, and they need Mila to dispose of them. Also, with the ogres being completely extinguished, the group is now returning to Otolwa. They celebrate at night with drinks, and Ivy serving them skewers, and delicious cocoa meat soup as well. The whole gang is impressed by the various cooking techniques Ivy has accumulated. As they enjoy themselves, Ivy worries about Ciel, since the group said they had eliminated all the monsters. But Ivy's past self reassures her that if they were fighting her Adondola, there'd be a huge fuss and everyone would know about it immediately. And she's right, Ciel is yawning away from the camp. The entire group gathers around Ivy and Mila introduces her older twin brothers, Tolto and Malma. The three make up the Green Gale group. The twins come by and praise Ivy as their sister had mentioned how intelligent she was, and wanted Ivy to join their group when she grows up. However, Latrell butts in saying, no way, since Ivy is going to be his little brother. But Seizel gives him a good smack, telling Latrell to stop messing around. At the sight of the adventurer group Lightning King approaching, Mila and her siblings decide to leave the scene. Apparently the twins Tolto and Malma aren't comfortable around Lightning King's captain, Barolda. However, she's happy with the captain affirming Ivy should be traveling with Seizel back to town. Back in her tent, Ivy releases Sora so he can have his meal, bringing out tons of portions she was able to procure from the trash piles, making Sora cheer so loud she needs him to quiet down. While the two relax, Ivy feels the same sickening presence from earlier. She decides to hide Sora away as the presence draws closer, but it just...
We wait. We wait for a few seconds for you to catch up, obviously.
suddenly disappears. Outside her tent, Latrell calls out to her. Turns out, he was hoping Ivy would help him cook tomorrow's breakfast in the morning. However, with him leaving, she's still wary of that strange presence she felt. She goes back inside and wonders if Latrell could potentially be the source of the presence. Sora tries to explain, however, it's meaningless because Ivy doesn't get it. She wonders if tamers with stars like Mila would be able to understand what he's saying. He begins a staticky vibration, reminding Ivy of how he was shaking those times when they passed by the guy with the illegal alcohol and the gang of murderers. She decides to ask Sora about Latra, Seizel, Noga, and Shifal, and Sora responds cheerfully. However, when hearing Mila of the Green Gale, he begins his fearful shakes, indicating she must be the source of the sickening aura.
People call it the biggest small town festival in Minnesota.
And we came up with the idea of creating a community s'mores table.
The Hershey Company got wind of this, sent 40,000 candy bars.
Made my day 100 times better. I love s'mores so much.
At least
At
it's
the
not Mr.
Towa
Beast came.
village
You
gate,
know what
the gate
happens
guard
if
tries to
you
check
you'll get
Ivy with
diabetes.
name and originating village. However, when proving Captain Octo from Latome is her guarantor using her bank tablet, she is granted permission with a simple name signing. Entering in, she stares in awe at the big bustling town of Otowa. They decide to set a place to rest at the Adventurer's Clearing, where Seizelk explains even though they had just finished clearing the monsters surrounding the area, they all can't go home yet, as there are dangerous people also causing a problem. The town watch located their hideout and raided it earlier, but it seems the information was leaked and the hideout completely deserted. It deeply angers Seizelk to know people are being abducted, but there have been no reports of any suspicious character sightings. Ivy's particularly worried after learning she's a prime target. This organization primarily targets children. The entire group wishes they had some sort of lead or clue, so Ivy decides to share her experience of almost getting attacked, making everyone gasp in astonishment. A man from Berolda's group then releases a barrier so they can discuss without any outside ears listening. Ivy then recounts her story of being chased in the forest by a sickening presence before she met Blazing Sword. But when a monster, aka Ciel, appeared, the presence ran away. The group praises Ivy on her particular talent of sensing things, which she had acquired living in forests alone for the last few years. She then talks about the dark presence she felt back at camp that had disappeared when Latra came by, making Seizelk suspect the star of Blazing Sword. However, Latra clears himself, with his alibi being he had just come by to ask Ivy to help him make breakfast. And Nuga suspects the appearance of Latra made the one with the dark presence flee. She begins to explain the real culprit as Mila, but when asked for evidence, she recalls Mila saying such a rare slime could be sold at a high price, and the adventurer group who had tried to steal Sora from her. She couldn't stand the thought of more people coming after Sora, so instead of elaborating further, Ivy tells them to forget what she said. Night comes, and in her tent, Ivy has no idea what to do, given she can't just tell people about him. Sora just lightly affirms with his constant poo-poo-poo phrasing, making Ivy wonder if he's trying to say it's alright if she tells them about him. Ivy then remembers when Luba had told her all secrets will eventually come to light, and that one day, Ivy would need people who will fight beside her. In the morning, she sees her allies in the clearing. She's about to make breakfast, but Seizelk stops her for the secluding barrier to cast around them. Bad news, they did in fact find out about a darker side to Mila of the Green Gale, and her older brothers as well. After hearing Ivy's tip yesterday, they decided to track Mila's every movement, and they spotted Green Gale doing some clandestine business with a traveling merchant. One of the men from Berolda's group tried even testing them as the merchant was leaving, and everyone from Green Gale only claimed they were giving direction to a lost man. But they're especially suspicious, also using a sound barrier like this one to prevent their conversation from leaking. They'd never use it to simply give directions. Shifal also looked into the merchant at the trading guild, but learned the merchant wasn't conducting any business in this town. Putting it all together, a merchant from another town, using a costly magic item that prevents sound from leaking, yet not conducting any business? The team is upset, as many of them are good friends with Mila and her brothers. However, Seizelk is glad they finally have a lead to the abductions. Ivy is surprised they believed her so easily without too much evidence. So Latra asks her why she makes food for them. She replies, it's because she wants everyone to enjoy the things they eat. That statement alone, and the way Ivy behaves, is all reason enough for them to know she's not a person who would lie to them. Hearing this makes her smile. Her eyes gleam. She thinks she's nothing to anyone, and yet they still trusted her. She then reveals to them she is in fact a tamer, and the slime she tamed was the one who told her about Mila. She brings them back to her tent and introduces Sora, and everyone stares in awe as they've never seen a rare transparent slime before. She's not sure why, but Sora somehow has the ability to see through bad people, and immediately Berolda and Seizelk understood why Ivy had to keep Sora a secret, since the rarity of the slime could have brought pursuers after them. So, everyone in the group promises to keep him a secret. One of the men named Rick Belt begins to pet the cute slime, and Latra brags about Ivy, singing Ivy's praises because he found him first. Apparently, transparent slimes are only ever heard of in legends and stories, all while Rick Belt continues to pet Sora with his head, only for him to get pulled away by Shifal and beaten up. After recovering from his pounding, Rick Belt decides to test Sora's ability to see through evil. He claims himself to be Latra of the Blazing Sword, which makes Sora spaz out like all the other times he'd come across wrongdoers. But they already mentioned his name, So, Sora might just not like Rickvelt from the excessive petting. The man with the blonde hair then tries next, claiming his name to be Malric, which of course causes Sora to spaz when we learn his name is actually Lockric. Man, I don't know if I can keep going on with all these weird names. But anyways, Malric is actually the bald guy above him, who secretly drank all of Shafal's alcohol last night. Something Sora confirms is true. However, Shafal isn't happy about his missing alcohol, giving Malric a nasty look, chasing after him and beating him up. As the group eats their meals under a barrier, Sazak remarks on how he never expected the traders to be from the Green Gale group. Beralda then adds that it makes sense since they've never been able to find any clues on the kidnapping organization. The enemies had been hiding in plain sight all along, but now, knowing Mila, Tolto, and Mama are the traitors, it'll make it easier to snuff out the rest of the villains. Ivy agrees with a saddened tone, prompting Lachua to ask if it's hard for Ivy to think of Mila as a bad person. And he's right on the money. He's apparently known Mila ever since they were kids. For Rickvelt, Malma is a good friend of his as well, which is why he wants to stop him with his own hands. No one is happy to have to detain their friends. Beralda then explains the kidnapping incident started around 10 years ago. People thought that kids were going missing because they'd fallen victim to monsters. The group discovered the existence of the clandestine organization when they had taken some of the victims who had escaped under their protection. Ivy then concludes there must be other traitors in the organization, causing everyone to audibly gasp. If the organization has been around that long, there has to be more than just one team of traitors. Sazak agrees, bringing up that time again when they had raided the criminals' hideout to find nobody, knowing there were only a handful of people other than the Green Gale that could have exposed.
So number 6, day number 6. I'm correct. I lost track, okay? If anyone's actually gonna rewatch, if they're gonna actually watch the entire thing, then do it. So we have literal enemies. Right now, I think I should update the house a bit. 3, 2, 2.
Their plans. A bigger problem is that the Green Gale's promotion was endorsed by a member of the nobility, which is why Beralda's group trusted them. This isn't usual, as most nobles actually look down on adventurers. So why would they promote the Green Gale to other high-ranking adventurer groups? The gang then gets annoyed as they couldn't figure out how obvious it was that this particular noble is involved, something even a 7-year-old could figure out. But Ivy starts to whine hearing that. Even though she doesn't look like it, she's a 9-year-old. Her birthday is at the end of the 8th month, and she just happened to turn 9 today. Upon hearing this, everyone begins wishing Ivy a happy birthday and clap for her, causing her to blush and thank them. The current situation is more dire, so Lachua proposes a proper birthday celebration later, instead of just these well wishes. However, Ivy assures him these are more than enough. She smiles warmly, wondering how many years it's been since someone had told her, "Happy birthday." Lachua then questions if she's really 9 though, because at times she says things and cooks so well, she seems much older. Probably because of the insight from her past self. Getting back to the task at hand, they decide to figure out who else they can trust in this town. They head to the Adventurers Guild to test the Guildmaster, Rogleaf, or Mr. GM. Sora seems to react positively to him. Then, the Captain of the Watch, Berksby, introduces himself. Sora is still positive. And finally, Captain Agrop, and Sora is still fine. Beralda pulls out a little crystal and observes the three, saying it's a magic item that can tell if someone who has spoken is good or bad. This is of course to prevent the exposure of Ivy's rare slime. Ivy makes the excuse that the item only lasts for a week before it becomes a useless stone, so Rogleaf tells them he'd like the gang to use it to uncover members of the criminal organization. That way, they can find the traitor who passed on the information about their investigations. He then orders all adventurers to be summoned here. The gang then heads to the merchant's house that the criminal organization had used as their base. To preserve as much evidence as possible, watchmen stand guard while they continue to investigate. Captain Berksby introduces the 2 guards to Ivy. However, Sora reacts to the second guard with green hair, Malgaljala. Ivy signals Beralda and Lachua walks up to build simple rapport, and it's clear Berksby is pissed at his subordinate. They walk inside and Vice Captain Agrop isn't happy because he really trusted that guy. However, all the watchmen were summoned here too, so they intend to dig up every single criminal that's a part of the kidnappings. Day turns to evening, and everyone is exhausted. No one is happy.
We wait, because if we keep it honest and aren't going too loud, I'll wait for a few seconds.
To find out that out of 150 watchmen, 38 of them are traitors, meaning all their previous moves were for sure leaked. Then appears Count Valtoria and Lord Ferranda to congratulate them on their work in investigating the crime scene, but we know they were really here to discover all the traitors. When the two introduce themselves to Ivy, Valtoria triggers Sora, making it clear he's the noble that's a part of the big crimes. However, Ferranda checks out as a good guy. When they leave, everyone is disappointed because Valtoria is a hero to this town, but everything makes sense now, as there had to be someone powerful in control. Captain Birksby's emotions spiral, remembering all the failed raids and the allies that were killed in combat. He punches the wall in frustration, knowing he's the one who informed the Count of their movements previously, blaming himself for the death of his men. They try to calm him down. After all, the evil organization are the ones to blame. Ivy then observed that the time between their arrival here and Count Valtoria's was a little short. It couldn't have been simply by chance. One of the traitors must be hiding near this base to keep an eye on it. They then begin to wonder how all the evidence here could have been displaced, knowing there were still guards on the good side watching this base. So Ivy quickly concludes the places where the bad guards were instructed to search must be areas that contained evidence. It's just the bad guards didn't report any. They head to the room the front bad guard Malgalgula was in charge of and send him away with another task. While searching inside, Ivy's past life tells her there must be a secret in the bookcase, like in the movies. But Ivy has no idea what a movie is. She spots the only book where the corner of the spine is scuffed and decides to climb and push it, unlocking the magic door containing tons of hidden records. Inside, the gang finds incredible sums of money beyond any imagination of wealth. Birksby then finds records of the organization's business dealings, containing evidence of kidnappings. He then suggests that they put everything back till the organization believes they hadn't found the evidence yet. The next day, outside, everyone has everything is. They can't leave Ivy alone for any reason. So Latra follows Ivy while she does laundry. He then asks something he's been wondering for a while now. Is he really a boy? Upon hearing this, Ivy begins tearing up, but she's just sorry for deceiving all of them. However, Latra says it's fine, especially knowing it's more dangerous for girls to travel alone. He says it's better this way for now, and he'll pretend he doesn't know. But next to make her entrance is Mila of the Green Gale. She offers idle chit-chat and to bring Ivy along to explore the town with her to find delicious sweets shops. Latra then invites himself, something that Mila protests, saying she wasn't inviting him, even with her seeming reluctant at first. She then says, fine, all 5 of us can go, with her older brothers Toto and Malma deviously walking in. Latra, Ivy, and Green Gale have a stare-off. Yo, why does Green Gale look so evil now? Latra and Mila walk up to each other even closer, but it's only to play rock, paper, scissors? Latra wins, so they're going to his spot of choice. Although Ivy seems a little confused at the game between the two childhood friends. Inside the sweet shop, Toto and Malma are munching on the desserts, finishing so quickly they need more. Latra then asks why Ivy was invited out, and Toto explains Mila likes Ivy because he's a really good kid. So they couldn't keep wondering and invited him out. Mila scolds the 2 brothers for scaring her, and when she turns to Ivy, 3-star flame attacks. However, knowing Latra has no defensive skills, Toto wouldn't mind sparring to see who is stronger between them. Mila tells them to stop, wondering why people with combat-type skills are always so uncivilized, causing Toto to respond that she wouldn't understand. She only has the tamer skill, and she can't even tame strong monsters. With her slimes, she can only take out the trash. Hearing that causes her to sadden a little. Ivy gets up to defend her, saying Mila's 2-star skill is amazing, and Lasto and Lidl are rare slimes that can dispose of weapons. Ivy has traveled to many trash dumps, where she'd find something useful. That's why she knows, even when people think something has no value, there will always be someone who treasures it. Mila's heart warms a little from this, and Latra agrees that being a tamer is a splendid job that can help others. But Toto thinks it's better to have something strong and flashy, since those things bring a lot of money. Malma adds that because their skills aren't that interesting, they're better off as adventurers, because if they had more money, then they wouldn't be in this position. And hearing that leaves Ivy a little curious. Afterwards, Latra asks Ivy how they were, and she responds that Sora freaked out at all of them. She misunderstood. He meant the sweets at the restaurant. They're absolutely a favorite of his. He chose the restaurant Flo Flo for a reason. It's run by an adventurer he trusts, so they'd always be safe in that shop. With all of Green Gale now being confirmed traitors, they find it sad. Latra reminisces on his childhood. This town was a safe place for children then, a place where adults would praise you for doing good and smack you when you'd caused mischief, making Ivy remember her own hometown before she turned 5 at least. Now, wherever a child goes, an adult has to be there to watch over them. With the children being tied to the adults, the town is uncomfortable and restricted. Latra wants to restore the peace this town used to have. Later, in the adventurer's clearing under the barrier, the gang learns of Green Gale's attempt to invite Ivy to have snacks with them. But to do it in broad daylight? Why would they go such lengths to target Ivy? Because of her being protected by both the Blazing Sword and Lightning King, it'd be a great risk for Green Gale, as they'd probably be the first suspects if Ivy went missing. Ivy's past life mentions the idea of a decoy. Elaborating further, the true nefarious organization wouldn't have a problem with Green Gale getting caught, as long as they can still remain in the shadows. And in fact, to spread word of the existence of traitors, it actually makes a lot of sense to send a well-known group like Green Gale to be scapegoats, sacrificial pawns that are a big enough distraction for the real evildoers to retrieve all the money hidden in the merchant's house. Green Gale would probably be disposed of to keep information from leaking. Latra gets concerned because he doesn't want to lose his childhood friend. This is when Ivy suggests letting herself get captured by Green Gale.
Kinder Chocolate. Crafted for kids, loved by all.
That way, they can have her relay that security at the merchant base will be relaxed. Fake information that'll cause the evil organization to think it's safe to retrieve the money and documents. Meaning Blazing Sword...
It's lagging. We listen. And we wait. How's everyone been? How has everyone been? Good. That's great. If horrible, then I feel
and
sorry.
Lightning King can lie in wait to catch them. It's such a well thought out plan, they really wonder if Ivy is 9. They find the plan compelling, but Sazelt and Barolda don't want to put her in danger. They know once the fight with the organization begins, it'll be an all-out war. But both the Watch and the Adventurers have many traitors amongst them. However, Latra promises to keep Ivy safe, no matter the cost. And Ivy logically concludes whether or not she's a decoy, she's still in danger of being targeted. So better to narrow the timing of the attacks by acting as bait, and also catch the culprits. They want to get this plan started, however, they're still worried about getting ambushed by other traitors. Ivy's past self then suggests tear gas bombs, but that doesn't exist in this world. So she asks if there's a magic item that could put enemies to sleep, and Sazelt brings up a sleep sphere. However, it'd put both enemy and allies to sleep within range. Ivy stands up, because with the organization still not knowing that this group knows about them, the time to strike is now. She rallies everyone, because they can't let this opportunity pass. At the Adventurers Guild, Master Rogleaf calls all adventurers, telling them that the guild has been charged with guarding Ivy's safety. This is to show everyone in Altoa and outside of it that this town is safe, and he wants everyone to come up one by one and introduce themselves. With the first act about to begin, Ivy and Sora brace themselves. The first man, Aderically, triggers Sora, and they continue their work. Over at the merchant base, Vice Captain Agrock can tell Captain Birksby is a little antsy, but he denies it, saying it's just in his imagination. Birksby then mentions he saw Barolda smile. For a long time, they'd been troubled by this criminal organization. They were starting to grow weary and hopeless. Over and over, the town watch would corner them, and they'd flee, with every interaction having casualties. Whenever speaking of the organization, a sense of grim resolve hung in the air. But when Ivy speaks, Barolda smiles. Thanks to Ivy, the winds have changed. Birksby feels relieved over this. Shafal and gang approach to tell Berksby to organize a special unit. A monster lair has been discovered in a cave in the forest. Berksby is confused because he thought the suppression squads took care of all them, but Shafal interjects, saying one escaped and hid there. They want to take out the monster in one go and are requesting a large number of watchmen. They're up against a ferocious foe and will have to deal with other menaces along the way. So Shafal suggests Berksby choose members accordingly. Wink wink. Berksby catches on and leaves the personnel selection to Vice Captain Agrop. With introductions at the guild hall finished, Rogleaf tells everyone to wait, as he'll have a special assignment for them. Ivy is exhausted after all the hard work, but Sora is very cheery. Mila comes by to congratulate Ivy on his work, and thanks Ivy for telling Mila her work of disposing of trash to be very important. It made Mila happy. Malma and Tolto come by to tell her she'll surely be safe now that all the adventurers know her face, with Latra telling them for sure now no one will come after Ivy, with Mila answering somewhat nervously that he's right. Latra then suggests they get sweets again now, but at a different place, to which Tolto and Malma respond positively. However, this is all a ruse for Ivy and Latra's plans.
Wake up with delicious O's. Cheerios.
Elsewhere, Berksby wants Shafal to divulge more details of the plan, but Shafal refuses since they don't know who might be listening, and he can't use a sound barrier as he wants to avoid having the organization think they're sharing secrets, which would put them on guard. Gaboldula comes up, having learned from Berksby that Vice Captain Agrop is downstairs, putting together a watchman force to eliminate the monster in the forest. Nuga then mentions Berksby should rethink sending all of his men, since this place is still important to the criminal organization, so they should leave some men here. Maurik suggests Berksby leave the selection of men to Gaboldula, since he knows the place so well. After Gaboldula leaves, Shafal shows Berksby the sleep sphere, because the plan is when the enemy comes to reclaim this place, they're gonna have a nice rest. That, and their allies as well. And when Shafal takes off, Nuga presents Berksby an item usually used on powerful monsters. Downstairs, Agrop has the forest unit ready, and Berksby notes that most of the men Gaboldula picked for guard duty of this place are traitors. Elsewhere, Mila brings them to Mamaroko, a sweet shop she really likes, and with the next part of their plan in motion, Ivy and Latra are ready to enter the belly of the beast. In the confectionery shop, Mila recommends Danzu to Ivy. It's supposedly the sweetest confection the shop has to offer. Latra warns against it as one bite is so sweet, it'll make your eyes roll back and you'll faint. What kind of sweet is this? Mr. Hag, the shop owner, takes their 5 Danzu order. However, when Ivy looks at Sora, he trembles, signifying the shop owner is definitely a bad guy. Ivy signals Latra because it's time for the operation to begin. As their sweets are readied, Latra tells Green Gale he has a confidential request for them coming straight from the guild master, and he's telling them this because he trusts them so much. A special unit of watchmen and adventurers is being put together right now, and they're about to set out for the forest. While they're gone, security in town will be short-handed, so he needs their help in policing. Tolto and Malma wonder what could be going on that's so big that the watchman and guildmaster would decide to leave the town wide open. Well, Latra explains ogres and an ogre king have been spotted in a cave in the forest, all while Mr. Hag is lacing their sweets with drugs? With the food being presented, Latra gives Ivy a denying no, as in they're not going to eat it. And then, while hearing from Latra that the merchant base isn't being guarded so heavily, Mr. Hag exits the shop at a quick pace. Now that he's gone, Latra gets to what he really wanted to ask. Why is Green Gale helping the organization? And the three gasp when being asked how much they'll get for abducting Ivy. Mila tries to deny this at first. However, when Latra pushes his and Ivy's dishes towards them to taste, all three of them refuse. Looks like they'll be enjoying sweets in jail. Mila gives in, telling her brothers they should just give up. Malma refuses, but Mila responds, "We've done enough, haven't we? All these cruel things. Is money really that important?" Tolto gives a scowling look, asking if she's going to betray them, with Latra reminding the brothers that they're the traitors, since they betrayed the trust the town had given them. The brothers get up quickly, uncaring about the consequences. With Toto and Malma brandishing their weapons, Latra tells them to stop because he doesn't want to fight them. But Malma begins his attack anyway. Latra easily parries all of his strikes and knocks him back. Even not having a skill in defense, Latra trained himself in defensive techniques. He believes his defense might even be stronger than Toto's defensive skill. Hearing this angers Toto, so he goes to strike with Latra blocking easily. Toto is 1 star in long swords, however, Latra is 2 stars, easily sending him back. Malma then gets up to attack again, and with Latra dodging every strike, Ivy screams that Toto is behind him, so Latra burns him, and the 2 siblings have to douse the fire. The brothers go for another attack, but Mila summons Lasso and Lidl to dissolve their blades, and Latra is able to knock both of them out. Latra looks at Mila, who is totally done. She doesn't want to live this life of crime anymore. She apologizes for deceiving Ivy this entire time, but both Ivy and Latra thank her for saving their lives. Then enters Flo, the proprietor of the first sweets shop they went to, asking what's going on. So Ivy divulges a bit of their plan to strike against the organization.
Make the best part of gaming the load screen.
Merchant base, masked adventurers come to attack, but we can see it is all a ruse, with both sides corrupted giving signals that now's the time to move the treasure hidden inside. The corrupted watchman points the adventurers to a hidden room in the library on the 3rd floor, with 2 non-corrupted watchmen having secretly watched them, unsure of what to do, not knowing who's friend and who's foe. Count Valtoria then gets escorted to the library, and he commands his followers to remove all the records and money this room holds. However, he trips the sleep sphere that knocks everyone out in the entire building, friend and foe. Heading towards the forest, Captain Birksby and Agrop know the guys behind them are trying to take them by surprise. But unfortunately, their plans have been foiled by a 9-year-old monster team. Behind them, Sazelk and Barolda are ecstatic for their side to go wild, as Birksby tosses Agrop their ace of their plan, which was suggested by Shifal. The watchmen behind place their hands on their swords, with Agrop noticing the traitors are perfectly placed at the front. Birksby can tell they plan to take care of Agrop first, then him. It makes sense because the 2 of them are the strongest, and the traitors would want to leave no witnesses. The corrupted watchmen strike, but Agrop parries the arrow so Birksby can trap them with a net gun. But that's not a regular net. It's an electric one. Agrop then hops atop Birksby to fire another net, giving the signal to Sazelk to slug the corrupted adventurers, with the Blazing Sword and Lightning King beginning their brawl with the evildoers. After Barolda headbutts one of the guys, a good adventurer is flabbergasted as he has no idea what's going on, so Barolda debriefs him a little bit about the plan, and Sazelk gives the command to capture all traitors. After a successful fight, Birksby explains this net is usually meant for large monsters, as it's imbued with potent magic that suppresses physical strength. One of the watchmen tries to play dumb, asking what their captain is doing, so Birksby replies that he's investigated all of you traitors, with Agrop giving another shock to them. And that's what they get. They sold kids into slavery. Get them out of here. But unfortunately...
Yeah, no slavery of kids here. Enslaved monsters. Don't do anything.
Well, the good ones are trapped in there too.
Don't enslave anybody.
Well, they're still grateful
Even
for their
monsters
assistance in
and
capturing the bad ones. They were able to safely capture all the traitors within the Watch, and all the traitors among the adventurers as well, all thanks to the plan Ivy came up with. She doesn't want to take all the credit, but they can't help but thank her for saving the town, as Count Valtoria gets ushered in, telling the man behind him to unhand him. However, Lord Ferranda tells him he won't be getting freed. The Guildmaster had informed Ferranda ahead of time, and after looking through all the documents hidden within the library, Valtoria's evil deeds have come to light. Ferranda sent a messenger to the royal capital, meaning Valtoria's punishment is inevitable, and the villagers are just as unhappy, ready to drag out and kill all the traitors. I feel them. Their kids taken and their town made unsafe by these villains. But Sazelk says it's bad because they've lost control of themselves. There's going to be a riot if this doesn't stop. Brooksby attempts to calm them, letting them know the town of Altowa is safe now. The villagers are still angry, demanding they get the traitors. However, Brooksby reasons with them, saying he needs to make sure they secure all the evidence first before the traitors are officially announced. But the next thing really shocks them, when he asks the villagers not to lay a hand on any of the traitors. However, it's because all of the convicted need to work as slaves, and what awaits them will be the harshest labor beyond what any of them can imagine. The traitors cannot even choose to die. They'll be forced to work for the benefit of this world, and if they're killed here, their suffering will end. Hearing Brooksby's reasoning, the villagers agree. Ivy understands just how amazing Brooksby is, having calmed the villagers down so they don't end up committing crimes. I mean, I was on board with the burning, but making them be slaves till they die makes more sense. Ivy really praises Brooksby, saying she'd like to be just like him someday, making Latra and Shifal a little distraught, saying she doesn't need to give up her life like the captain yet. However, Brooksby doesn't enjoy their banter so much. With that though, they have one last mission for Ivy. A hall is gathered with a large group of people. Sazalk announces they're still gathering information on the members of the organization they've arrested, but they still need everyone's help. Anyone who refuses to divulge what they know about the org will be suspected of colluding with them. Barolda explains to Ivy these people were all in the vicinity of the organization's base, so they need to be investigated. They need to capture the people who are keeping watch for the org. Looking at her bag, it seems Sora is excited to work, so Ivy's just as ready as well. In the guild hall, Brooksby and Agrop thank Ivy once again for helping them thwart the evil organization that's been tormenting Ortowa for years. Brooksby then hands her a summary of the recent events, which includes a list of those arrested. According to the guild's report, it wasn't just the traders in town who were arrested. As a result of investigations based on the documents obtained from their former base, 58 people were added to a kingdom-wide wanted list, of which 45 have been detained so far. Not even just nobility, but even the relatives of the royal family were also included. Every bit of new information they obtain is astonishing. In the last page, Ivy finds her reward for helping them out. She'll receive 15 gold tablets, or 150 ladal. Here we go, that mice math again. 150,000 field mice worth. So if she made dried meat from 150,000 field mice, ate 3 a day while she...
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, hold on, I need to do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So about 8 on that side.
Traveled with 365 days in a year, she could eat for 140 years. Outside of town, Ivy and Sora are
1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Okay, so it's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bruh. Let's see from here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Purging through their traps, but sadly, not a single one was tripped today. Oh, CL's here. CL simply goes back into the bushes and forces out the rodents into Ivy's traps. What a good cat. At the meat shop, the butcher admires Ivy's meats that are fresh and dressed so beautifully. The butcher offers her a wonderful sum of payment, but even better, the meat goes into tonight's celebrations, with GM Rogleaf giving a toast to celebrate the organization's destruction, and everyone is happy to give Ivy huge plates of meat, but she can't possibly eat all of it. Latra tells them to lay off, but they wonder why since he's usually handing Ivy the biggest pile of food. Barolda comes to thank Ivy, telling her Count Faltoyer finally admitted to his crimes, with some members of nobility being involved. The royal capital is pretty hectic right now. Even though the bad guys have been caught, Ivy is still worried about Mila. So, Rogleaf reports that Green Gale was insignificant enough to be used as a decoy and cast aside. They didn't know anything of import and haven't committed many crimes. We even see Mila being remorseful in jail, uttering, "Thank goodness, we won't have to commit any more crimes." Betraying her brothers, she is apparently being given some lenience. Rogleaf also found out that Ivy and Sora were behind discovering all of the bad guys. After he looked into the list of all magic items, he became suspicious of the little orb they used. But he's fine and understands why it was so important to hide Sora's existence. At Rogleaf's request, she lets Sora out of the bag, and Rogleaf is surprised to see the translucent slime. Rogleaf thanks Sora for all his hard work, and Sora responds in cheer. Rogleaf then asks if Ivy would like to continue living in Otowa. He knows she's headed to the royal capital, but if she has no reason to, everyone would love to have her around. They'll even prepare a house for her. Ivy thinks back to when fortune teller Luba told her if she found a place she'd like to live on the way to the royal capital, there'd be no need to force herself to keep traveling. However, she'd need to find people she could trust and tell them everything. So gripping Sora close, she admits that she's starless. And everyone is surprised to hear she's a 0-star monster tamer. She tells them the story of when at the age of 5, her skill was checked at a church, of how she was told that the gods had abandoned her, how she lost everything. Her parents and everyone around her became her enemies. Everyone except fortune teller Luba. When she turned 8, the village head announced that a starless would bring misfortune to the village, so she was nearly killed and ran away from the village. Back then, she was so sad and frustrated. She just wanted to live, so she ran. She was so scared because she didn't know how long she'd have to run and didn't know where to run. And so, she kept running all the way here. With everyone saddened by hearing Ivy's tale, Latra commends her for persevering this far. He's in tears knowing how hard it must have been all this time. Seizelk is impressed that she managed to not lose heart under those circumstances. All of them tell her they'll be there for her, causing her to weep as they remind her she'll never have to worry about her story.
Bro has the limited edition lip filler. Bro has the bro is using some kind of god's power to have the biggest lips. Not saying that's bad, just saying that's very big. Bro's like a poppet.
Again, they'll even keep it a secret for her if she doesn't want people to know. With that, she puts on a smile, knowing she can leave on her journey with her heart at ease. Latra is shocked to hear she isn't going to live here, but Ivy explains up until this point, her journey had been about running away, thinking if people found out she was starless, she'd be killed. But then, she met Captain Ogto and Vice Captain Villavera, who helped her despite knowing her circumstances. And these guys too, who helped her when she was being targeted and even went along with her crazy plan. Luba had told her to learn more about the world, and because of these guys, she's gained more perspective and changed for the better. She won't run anymore, because she's perfectly fine being starless. She's going to continue her travels and find something she can do for people. The gang is all happy for her, but now it's become harder knowing they'll have to say goodbye. And apparently Rickbell is really gonna miss Sora. They celebrate hard, knowing Ivy is gonna be gone, and as Ivy watches, she wonders if this is what they call happiness. With the group seeing her off, she twirls with the new magic bags they've given her, since they can carry much more and weigh a lot less. Birksby also discloses that he looked into disintegrating slimes, and tells Ivy they're so weak, only she could have tamed one. Even a 1-star tamer is too strong for slimes like Sora. If it wasn't for her taming him, he may have just disintegrated and disappeared. Making Ivy's past self acknowledge Sora may have been born just to meet her. With their final farewell, the gang tells Ivy to think of Otowa as her home, and to come back anytime. Then suddenly, Ciel jumps out of the bushes, surprising everyone. With the shock of seeing Ivy's tamed in a Dondola, Shifal remarks Ivy seems more powerful than any tamer with stars he's ever seen. And with that, the three leave on their journey together. Post credits, nature is beautiful, as slimes are born throughout the forest. A little disintegrating slime comes out from a leaf as it watches the other slimes march along the path. The slime struggles because it wants to join them, but seeing other slimes just like it being easily killed off by other creatures and dissipating amongst the wind, the slime struggles to escape its meager existence. The wind eventually blows the slime away, but it's sad now that it's all alone, until a certain starless monster tamer comes to find him. What a wonderful ending for now. Honestly, the part where she told Latra and the gang about her past actually made me tear up a little. I'm glad she doesn't feel the need to run anymore. I hope they continue her journey in a second season. Subscribe for more content. For now, though, watch this next video. It's me, Comfy T. I'll see you all in the next one.
Get her a fucking dragon at this point. Wayne, you get a second season. Get her a fucking dragon. Ah, okay. So that means 9. You know what? Let's continue building the house after this. That would be fine if we continue building the house.
Wow, this tournament setting is absolutely gorgeous. Even from like the bird's eye view, I can't wait to like get in there in the game. Her charisma is, and the sunglasses. I need to know her backstory, the leather, the phoenix inspired design. Like I need to know. Who are these guys? Wait, the infamous Il Capitano himself? Oh my god, I have a feeling there's gonna be so much lore in this region. I'm so hyped. Yeah, Natlan's characters seem so unique and different from each other. I'm really excited to see how their stories intertwine and how the beautiful lands.
Hey, what's up guys? Imagine getting reincarnated into a dating sim where you're actually the hidden final boss, destined to be defeated by the protagonist. You try to live a quiet life, however, on the first day of the academy, you're forced to reveal in front of all the students that you've reached the max level, 99. With that, and causing a commotion with your dark magic, the main character now has her sights set on you. This is the fun, wacky, exciting story of the demon lore. So let's get started and watch the story unfold. But before we begin, just know this first part of the story is the prologue that follows the game's protagonist, Alicia. If you want to skip to the part where we follow the actual protagonist, go to this time or click the first link in the description. Alright, now let's begin. Alicia Einlight arrives by carriage into town, where she's newly enrolled into the Royal Academy as a first year. She spots a sickly granny, who she decides to heal using her light magic. But when she tells them this is her first day in the dorms, the granny's daughter hurries her because the academy's gates close at 6 p.m. Alicia runs as the bell tolls and trips right in front of the gate, where Oswald closes it and tells her school rules are no entry permitted after 6. The two exchange introductions, and we learn even though he's a first year as well, he's been helping weekly with school duties. Then, while proclaiming the rules are absolute, he tells Alicia she'll have to look for lodging in town tonight. Alicia gets upset because the entrance ceremony is tomorrow and tells him she needs to get into the dorms, especially since she doesn't have much money. While looking at her tattered bag, Oswald figures she must be the one commoner who was admitted this year. He does sympathize with her situation, but tells her to just give up, but she doesn't back down and begins whining. This is when Oswald begins pushing his glasses and tells her that just between them, there's a part of the wall on the eastern side that's crumbling, where students who break curfew often come and go from. This makes Alicia light up, and as they chat further, she learns Oswald is from the Grimsard family, and his father is a well-known cabinet minister. With Oswald softening up, Alicia decides to call her new friend Oz for short, which leaves him blushing. As she makes her way to the crumbling wall, she sees a boy named William already climbing it. He reaches out his hand to her, knowing she broke curfew too. As he guides her to the dorms, he shows her the drinks the older guys made him get as sort of a school initiation rule. They then continue their walk, he trips through one of the roof windows, and Alicia falls as well while trying to pull him up. This is when she crashes on top of Edwin Valshine, Will's childhood friend and second prince of Valshine Kingdom, leaving Alicia completely surprised. The principal scolds the two for all the trouble they've caused, but William tries to deflect blame on Alicia since he got distracted talking to her. But this doesn't stop the principal from confiscating the drinks. He then gives Alicia a warning since she was only admitted into the school with a scholarship due to her possessing the rare light magic, and both the students are to be punished with extra school duties for a week. After they leave, however, the principal thinks to himself that Alicia's magic
school bus graveyard. I love that.
In this world, fairies are slaves, second-class citizens, and servants to humanity. Picture yourself as a young girl with the occupation of a sugar artisan, because also in this world, confectionery sculptures are the most valued artworks to exist. You must travel to the capital of the kingdom to compete with your art for a royal medal, because winning would honor your mother and raise your reputation. But the road ahead is dangerous, filled with bandits and rabid animals, so you must purchase a fairy servant who is a capable bodyguard. However, you weren't expecting to come across such a beautiful and powerful fairy, one that makes your heart flutter. Except there's one problem. He hates humans, you included. So, will you be able to win the medal and melt his frozen heart? This is the exciting story of Sugar Apple Fairy Tale. Let's get started and watch this tale unfold.
Since this is a fucking mansion, it needs to be
In a tale
huge.
from long ago, the Highland Kingdom was once the land of the fairies. The fairies loved peace. They loved beautiful and fun things, and so they lived quietly and peacefully for hundreds of years. A young Anne Halport felt bad for the fairies as her mother told this tale. Her mother went on while crafting her confectionery, saying 500 years ago, humans rose in rebellion and made the fairies their servants. People say that fairies were fools who idled away their time and lost to the humans. But the mother personally didn't feel that way. There are fewer fairies than humans, so she believes they were simply outnumbered, was all. Little Anne asked her mother why she thought that, and her mother told her to just look at her creation, and Anne marveled at the beautiful sugary depiction of a fairy. Tasting some of the sugar, Anne also loved the delicious flavor. Then her mother explained that sugar confections are a sacred food. They extend the lifespans of fairies and bring good fortune to humans. And the first ones to make these sugar confections were fairies. The method of refining sugar apples into silver sugar was discovered by fairies as well. That's how sugar confections were invented in this world. Anne's mother explained this is precisely the reason why sugar artisans, most especially silver sugar masters, must never look down on fairies. They must keep company with fairies as friends. These words rang true throughout Anne's childhood. And now, at the age of 15, Anne brought a bouquet of flowers to honor her deceased mother. She wanted her mother in heaven to look after her, because Anne vowed to become a silver sugar master, just like she was. As Anne hopped on her carriage, her childhood friend Jonas Anders caught up to her, saying she was awful for leaving without saying a word, but she knew if she had said goodbye, he'd probably try to stop her. However, she admits being grateful to him, his family, and this village's people for being truly good to her mother. But this year, she intends on entering the sugar confectionery exhibition, no matter what. He understands as he's a sugar artisan too, but he believes it'll be impossible for her to travel all the way to the town it's held in, Lewiston, alone. After all, she's small for being 15, and as scrawny as a scarecrow, and her entire fortune consists of this run-down cart and horse. But he loves her as she is, and asks her to marry him. Brother, that is not how you court a lady. Apparently he's been entranced by Anne ever since her and her mother first came to their village, with him bragging that he came from a wealthy house, and related by blood to the founder of the Radcliffe Workshop School. Anne used this opportunity to take off and gave her goodbyes. She believed Jonas would never seriously propose to her. She thinks he just pities her because she's lost her mother. And she also doesn't like the idea of marrying someone and living as their wife.
Oh, look at that
She wants to-
Siamese. Your Siamese, Cody. Oh, look at him. He's so bumping his head and ears like that. Oh, look at it. He's so cute, but he makes me glitch.
Of her own life, she wants to chase her dreams. Arriving at her first town, she spotted a crowd and commotion going on. And oh no, this man was crushing a little fairy. The older man next to her explained that this labor fairy who serves the fairy hunter stomping him stole his own wing and tried to escape. With a grimacing look, the man presented the fairy's wing and squeezed it, throttling the little fairy under immense pain. With Anne knowing a fairy's wing is its life, she's horrified, asking why no one is trying to save him. The little fairy being gripped in the man's hand told him he'd never loyally serve a human. He swore to take back his wing no matter what. And with the man threatening his life, Anne kicked him from behind the knee, catching both the fairy and his wing. The little fairy grabbed his wing and scurried away, saying he'd never thank the likes of a human, and understood, after all, she is one of those detestable humans, isn't she? The fairy hunter then got up to yell at her, because she let his labor fairy escape. She then scolded him, saying that if he was going to kill the fairy, her letting him leave is no different. The man then began raising his hand towards her, but the crowd didn't take violence towards the child so kindly, which forced him to take off. Anne then went to the fairy market, and witnessed the horrible sight of the enslaved fairies being made to be sold as companions. She herself, though, was looking for a warrior fairy, but most of the stall owners wouldn't keep fairies as dangerous as that. But, apparently, there is one stall here that does. Entering the stall, Anne glances at a large, beautiful fairy wing, and the charming looks of this human-sized warrior fairy. She felt that the word beautiful could never do this fairy justice. She'd never seen a fairy like him. The fairy tells her he thought he saw something familiar, but it was nothing more than a scarecrow, referring to Anne, but she doesn't like that at all. In this world, she's considered a girl in her prime. However, this fairy doesn't care about the prime of a scarecrow. The stall owner then appears and apologizes on behalf of his merchandise. This fairy apparently calls anyone who passes by names with no care for who they are. This isn't good enough for Anne, though. She believes with a sharp tongue like that, he'd never sell as a companion fairy. However, the stall owner corrects her because he is in fact a warrior, killed 3 fairy hunters that tried to capture him, and is shocked, remarking that the warrior fairies she's seen up until now have been burlier and bigger. The stall owner assures her of the quality of his merchandise. He doesn't have any other fairies because warrior fairies are difficult to handle. The fairy then tells Scarecrow to stop dithering by him. It shocks her further that he's commanding her to laugh, finding it interesting as this is the first time he's heard the fairy ask for someone to buy him. He questions if the fairy fell in love with Anne at first sight. The fairy then responded, "Don't assume that I am like you, filthy human." Anne felt no choice and paid the man, pulling the beautiful wing out of the baggie, and verified its authenticity. The man warned her that warrior fairies are savages. If she lets her guard down, the fairy would most likely steal it away from her and kill her. The fairy then added he'd come to kill the stall owner as well, but Anne didn't like the fairy speaking as if he assumed he'd already kill her. As the two head out on her carriage towards Lewiston, she tells the fairy she wants his protection on the way there. He finds it to be a simple task. He'll even throw in a kiss as a special service. She responds by saying she doesn't need that kind of thing, and blushes knowing that would actually be her first kiss. She then asks for his name, so he snidely responds to call him Tom or Sam, whatever human name she likes. With her replying she'll call him Crow as a way to get him back for calling her Scarecrow, he calmly tells her his name is Xiao Fen Xiao. Hearing this,
you know what? Crow is actually a good name. I would probably call him like a piece of shit. Actually, I would probably call him whatever slur there is in the country that's not very offensive, and that I could technically use. Even though I don't like slurs, but that man is a bitch.
Anne remarks the name to be beautiful. She asks which part is his first name and which part is his surname, but we learn fairies don't differentiate between first and last names like humans do. She found the name to be a little too long, so she decided to call him Xiao. Anne then thought back to the little fairy who suffered from his...
Xiao? You mean like the warrior guy from, Xiao, Xiao, God... Oh my...
wing being squeezed. Wings are the source of a fairy's life force. Even if they're ripped off, they can survive. But if their wings are damaged, they weaken and die. Having learned that, humans rip off a single wing to force fairies to obey them. Anne stops the carriage to tell Xiao she bought him because she wanted him to serve as her guard. But she promises once they arrive in Lewiston, she'll return his wing to him. Xiao is surprised to hear she'd free a fairy that she just bought, wondering if such a naive human could exist. But to Anne, she's always believed that humans and fairies can be friends. That's all. She doesn't want anyone to serve her, and she also doesn't want to sell him to another human. That's why she'll return his wing to him, and on their travels, she'd like to even treat him as a friend. However, Xiao responded that they can never become friends. This is when Anne opens up that it was both her mother's and her ideal for humans and fairies to treat each other as equals. Xiao then replied that both mother and daughter have the brains of a scarecrow, making Anne raise her hand, furious at her mother being insulted. But she stops herself, asking why, if he hated her so much, did he tell her to buy him. Xiao got up to look at her face to face, and told her humans are all the same. In any case, he thinks serving a fool makes things easier for him, and seeing the beautiful gleam in his eyes, Xiao tells her she seems like the greatest fool thus far. Anne says nothing to this, only commanding the carriage forward. They make it to the bloody highway, a long stretch between here and Lewiston, where there isn't a single village or town, only fort shelters, which are convenient strongholds. There could also be wild animals along the way that attack indiscriminately, and bandits. Anne is surprised to hear Xiao's been here before, but he of course has been serving humans longer than she's been alive. Spending their first night at a fort shelter, Anne hands Xiao his dinner for the night. Sitting next to him, she can't help but think he's quite vexing, but also that his fairy wing is beautiful. Even in the dark, she feels compelled to touch it, but as it furiously vibrates, he says, "Don't touch me." Anne apologizes, realizing it was thoughtless of her. She wonders why she did that. She then screams in tears, calling out to her mother. Her mother appears, asking what's wrong, only to hear Anne had a horrible dream, a dream where her mother had died. Her mother then touched her face, and told her to find her life's path and walk it resolutely. And as Anne's mom faded away, she told Anne not to cry, but Anne didn't want her to go. Anne then woke up in tears, with Xiao on top of her? She quickly jolted up, a little discombobulated, trying to process what was happening. He then smirks, remarking he almost had it. She felt Xiao was heartless, because all she wanted was to be his friend. He then stood against her, with her back against the wall. "Friends? When you hold my life in your hands, I have been bought by you, forced to serve you. We can never be friends."
True.
Anne realized her behavior was foolish. She had already bought Xiao to serve her, yet she kept saying selfish things about wanting to be friends. She swears to never let her guard down again, by rolling up into a blanket to protect the wing baggie, which makes Xiao compare her to a bagworm moth. Anne is embarrassed, but despite all of this, she intends to keep her promise once they reach Lewiston and return his wing. Once she does that, she'll ask him if he wants to be friends again. Until then, she's strictly his master. With Xiao staring at the moon, he felt maybe he should be more patient. He's spent nearly 70 years being forced to serve humans. His freedom may have been put off for a day, but 3 days from now, he'll be free. Looking at Anne, he wonders why the sweet scent of silver sugar comes off of her, just like his precious Liz from before. The next day, they head out under the muggy weather, looking to reach the next fort shelter within the day. Xiao then suddenly tells Anne to stop the carriage. Oh no! A carriage is getting attacked by bandits. They spot Anne's, so she asks Xiao to take care of them, but that's not enough for Xiao. With her being his master, he wants her to command him. Even with her face flush red, he tells her to give him an order. She finally tells him if he doesn't go, she'll punch him. So he jumps out of the carriage and prepares for combat, leaving a bloody trail of bodies with a single slash. He then dispatches one after another, and the remaining bandits leave after learning he's a warrior fairy. However, Anne could only stare in shock, having witnessed Xiao's brutal slaughter. And outside the carriage that was surrounded by the bandits earlier is actually Jonas, riding forward. Anne asks him what he's doing here, so he tells her he was so worried he came after her and from now on, he'd protect her. However, Anne pleads for him to turn back, knowing the coming journey is going to be too dangerous for him, but he just refuses, professing it's because of his love for her, grabbing her arms, saying it's for her sake, even though she doesn't really believe it. Xiao then pulls Anne's carriage forward to tell her they must leave quickly, because the crows have caught the scent of the blood from earlier, meaning wolves will follow next. So she hops back to him and they move ahead, trying to leave Jonas behind. But this doesn't work, so Anne has to unfortunately burden Xiao with protecting Jonas as well. At the next fort shelter, Anne once again tries to tell Jonas to head back. However, he still refuses, telling her he's simply going where he wants to go. His pushiness is really giving her a headache. After preparing some stew, she heads to his carriage to give him some, and his labor fairy, Kathy, answers the door, with Anne offering the stew for him to eat after he wakes up. Kathy refuses to take it, claiming such a crude meal would not befit her master. But Anne shoves it for the fairy to take and storms off annoyed, because here on the road, they all need to eat what they can get. Offering the stew to Xiao, Still seething from Kathy's insults, he wonders why her head seems like it's been set on fire. Xiao takes the soup from her though, admitting he was just surprised to see she served him before she served herself. She didn't think much of it since it was proper manners, but oh, she forgot a spoon. But when she came back, she was just as surprised to see Xiao absorbing the meal. Fairies don't eat with their mouths. They cannot taste food except for one kind, silver sugar. It's sweet. Hearing this, Anne blushes, wondering if he'd like a confection, to which he smoothly answers, "I don't hate them." So, she proudly proclaims she'll make something he can enjoy, given her mother was a silver sugar master, so she herself had been perfecting the art of making confectionaries since she was a toddler. She heads to her carriage, but is surprised by a sudden rumble inside, so she runs back to Xiao and begs him to check it out. However, he tells her it's not in order. Then he refuses. So, she toughens up and heads in herself. With a stick ready, she stands in a nervous silence, and gets jump scared by a little fairy, which she somehow whacks all the way into Xiao. It's the fairy Anne saved earlier, Mithril Rid Pod. He explains the rumbling came about because he had nodded off with a nightmare and woke up with a jump. Aside from being a stowaway, he'd come to return the favor she did him. This confuses her a little because she's pretty sure he said he'd never thank a human. But that's right. That's why instead he'll be returning the favor. Anne doesn't quite need anything done, so she suggests he oil her wagon's axles, which makes him feel insulted if that would be her request for saving his life. He wants her to give him a more impressive task. Xiao begins getting annoyed, so he asks Anne if he can strangle Mithril. However, there wouldn't be any point to her saving him if he did. She tries telling him she doesn't need any favors so he can be off, but Mithril tells her if she doesn't give him a task, he will follow her into the depths of the underworld. This whole interaction is making Anne exhausted.
Holy shit! This is a fucking colony of the bee dragons! It's a whole family! It's a whole fucking family! There's 5 of them! Holy shit! I'll take the iron. I'll take the iron. Where is the iron? I'll take the iron. No more iron.
Pulls up her blanket for the night, saying she'll make a confection for Xiao tomorrow. The next day, Anne is exhausted.
And we wait. Now y'all day's been... Okay guys, there are way too
for
many
Mithril
persons
talking
out
all night, while he is napping peacefully. In the evening, at the next fort shelter, Anne introduces Xiao and Mithril to Jonas and Kathy, but her fairies respond pretty rudely, which embarrasses her. Seeing that Jonas has so much delicious food, she supposes he wouldn't want any of her soup, to which Kathy retorts of course her master wouldn't eat such a crude soup reeking of beast fat. This irritates Jonas, so he tells Kathy to stop being rude and orders her to disappear.
Iron! Why is there no iron?
Apologizes on his fairy's behalf, and quickly switches his harsh attitude towards his fairy to a kind softness, saying he'd love to have her soup again tonight. Anne nervously acknowledges him, even thinking the master and servant dynamic he has with his fairy is probably correct, but she doesn't feel good about it at all, completely unaware of the tension Anne feels. Mithril stupidly proclaims Kathy's powers to be cool, but still lacking compared to his own. The next day, Anne asks what his powers are, and Mithril proudly explains he was born in a great lake in the kingdom of Highland, on a drop of water that landed on a leaf. Anne then asks if all fairies are born from water droplets. But that's not it at all, actually. They are born from all sorts of things. They're born when the energy of an object condenses, when seen by a living being. Doesn't matter if it's human or animal. Being gazed upon causes the energy to take form. That's what turns into a fairy. Since Mithril comes from a lake, he can control water. So, he conjures up a water ball and shoots the cold droplet at Anne. She's amazed and asks what else he can do, but when she learns that's pretty much it, he feels pretty insulted. Even Shao snidely remarks, at most, Mithril could give some water to birds. But the fun mood comes to an end when a swarm of crows appear above them. Shao explains that crows are typically scavengers, looking for carrion, but when there is
That is correct. They're typically scavengers. Holy sh! There were zombies and skeletons? Let's hope
no
those
carrion
die.
for them to eat, they form large flocks to hunt down prey and devour them alive. Hearing this, Anne commands Shao to deal with the crows, so he tells them all to hide in the carriage. While the carriage rattles, Shao slices crow after crow. After the ordeal ends, Anne sees him standing amongst the black plumage of the decimated birds. He walks towards her, cockily remarking she was so scared. Her legs gave out. She denies this and falls over. So when he catches her, he calmly asks, "What's wrong, Scarecrow? Are you requesting a more special sort of service?" She blushes, saying, "Of course not," and being let down, she thanks him, still flushed. Riding onwards, they're off schedule because of the crow attack, so Anne points to a doctor's inn where they can stay for the night on her map. She's getting upset at herself, knowing her mother would have probably made it to Lewiston with much more ease, prompting Shao to ask where her mother is.
Бабуля, why are you still doing here? Что ты сейчас делаешь? А в другой ванне что, нельзя?
Что-что?
А в другой ванне нельзя?
А что, тебе мешает?
Нет.
Ну да что-то, мне тут удобнее, тут ярче из зеркала светлее.
Okay.
Anne sadly replies her mother died. And 2 weeks ago, she had made up her mind to become a silver sugar master, just like her mother. At the end of autumn, there's an event held in Lewiston called the Sugar Confectionery Exhibition, where Anne plans to submit a piece and have the king acknowledge her skills. She wants to be a silver sugar master this year, because in the winter, they celebrate what's called Pull Sol Day, where they send off those who died that year as they're pulled to the heavens. As a silver sugar master, she wants to make a splendid sugar confection with her own hands, and send her mother's spirit to the heavens. She hopes to reassure her dead mother. Hearing her heavy reason, Shao takes in Anne's heart of doing things. Reaching the doctor's inn, the owner gives them some rooms for Anne and her companions.
We need more food, and we need a safe place to eat that food. We don't have a safe place to eat that food, sadly.
Inside the dining hall, the gang spots two guests that arrived before they did. With Anne and Jonas sitting down to eat, she wonders why Shao isn't joining them. But Jonas gets frantic, explaining that fairies eating in front of people is usually considered both rude and absurd. She then asks the owner if it's okay, and he's also nervous. Not because of himself, but in case his other guests have a problem. However, the man with the brown hair, Hugh, says to pay him no mind, adding it's perfectly fine. After learning Anne and Jonas are both sugar artisans, he remarks having 2 labor fairies plus 1 companion fairy, referring to Shao, seems a little excessive. Anne corrects him though, because Shao is a warrior fairy, not a companion one. However, he doesn't buy this, especially given Shao's extravagant looks. He questions if Anne brought him along because she's fallen for him, but she denies this. Hugh then has his associate, Salim, put Shao to the test, and the two end up clashing blades. Anne is furious, but Hugh just smugly apologizes, saying he just had to make sure because he didn't believe such a pretty warrior fairy existed. She's still mad though, until Hugh promises to pay for the stay of their entire group, on the condition that both she and Jonas make sugar confections for him. Gathering materials inside her carriage, Jonas asks if it's really okay for her to use her silver sugar, since she still needs some for her exhibition piece in Lewiston. However, she assures him it's fine. She just can't use what's in her other 3 barrels. Coming out, Jonas swears he'll become the silver sugar viscount, and asks Anne to marry him, but, of course, she still turns him down. Back inside, with Hugh having prepped all the equipment for the two to use, Anne questions his identity, but the man just tells her to keep quiet and make something for him. With the 2 pieces finished, Hugh applauded their proficiency. However, he crushes their pieces with his fists, calling them so unsightly he couldn't bear to look at them any longer. For Jonas, Hugh comments that he's skilled, but all he wants to do is show off his technique, so his work completely lacks any inspiration. For Anne, Hugh thinks she did better than Jonas. However, the work seemed as if it were an imitation of something someone else made. He critiqued she was just copying someone else's style. All beauty, but no charm. With skills like these, he believes the 2 could never be silver sugar masters. Taking a little snack from the broken pieces as Hugh leaves, Anne clutches her dress in frustration. She then runs off into her room, curled up in the blanket, irritated further because Xiao finds this all so amusing. He simply responds that humans never spend their whole lives being laughed at, because unlike fairies, humans are always changing. In another 3 years, he believes she'll become startlingly beautiful. The color of her hair will turn a pale, beautiful gold, and her skills at making sugar confections will improve as well. Anne swears she'll improve her works to blow Hugh's mind, but feels some things can't change even with hard work. That's why she doesn't want to hear lies from Xiao. However, Xiao says he isn't lying. He knows firsthand because the very first thing he had seen when he was born was a human child, one who had the same hair color as Anne's, at 5 years old. He was born from that child's gaze. Liz, her name was Elizabeth. She was the daughter of nobles, and because of certain circumstances, she lived away from society. She was young, knew nothing of the world, and didn't know the existence of fairies. That's why she mistook him as her older brother. She led Xiao back to her mansion and gave him shelter. 15 years passed, and Liz's hair turned a pale gold. Her freckles disappeared, and she became a beautiful young woman. That's why he knows. Anne will continue to change, just as Liz did. Anne then asked where she was, and why she wasn't here with him, which made Xiao clench his fist as he answered, "She died. She was killed. Humans killed her." Anne tried to console Xiao, but he quickly got up and wished her a somber goodnight. The next day, as they continued their journey, Jonas called out to Anne, but she wouldn't respond. She was fixated on Xiao's past, especially on how he used to have an emotional bond with a human girl. Knowing he spent the same time with Liz as Anne had spent with her mother, Xiao also must have had a familial relationship with that girl. So hearing it was stolen by human hands really saddened her. Humans caused Xiao's heart to freeze over.
Oh, 10. Let's go. It's the night we can deal with everything. Yippee!
Work shelter. Anne was curled up because of the cold. Xiao then explained that fairies don't feel weather like humans do. Seeing him by the fire, Anne desperately wished for a magic that could melt Xiao's heart. She decided to prepare the sugar confection she promised him, but opening one of her barrels, she found it completely empty. She was distraught, wondering where her silver sugar had gone. Xiao came in to see her crying from the situation at hand. She has 3 barrels left, but the silver sugar she needed to make her entry piece is gone. Sitting down at the fire, Xiao explains the situation to Jonas, who is flabbergasted. He wonders how that was even possible, knowing Anne's cargo hold was locked. But Kathy then mentions she saw Mithril coming out of the carriage window the night they stayed at the doctor's inn. His body sparkled in the moonlight, meaning he was most likely covered in silver sugar. Mithril then suddenly woke up, hearing all of the commotion, and Jonas suddenly yelled at him to come down to them. He then accused Mithril of stealing Anne's silver sugar, and that Kathy witnessed it. However, Mithril denied the accusation. Mithril pleaded with Anne, hoping she wasn't suspicious of him, but with her shaken look, even though she didn't say it, he could tell she was suspicious of him. This brought Mithril to tears and he stormed off, even though Anne didn't want him to go. Anne was heartbroken, ready to give up, but Jonas suggested she just make enough silver sugar for her entry piece. Anne doesn't believe that's possible, since she doesn't have any sugar apples. However, Jonas knows there's a grove of sugar apple trees near the Bloody Highway. After picking the apples, the two work together to refine the silver sugar she needs for the next 3 days. Handing Xiao a sample, he questions if Mithril was really the one who stole the silver sugar. However, none of that mattered to Anne. She just needed to spend her time crafting her entry piece. She stared at the sketches her mother had drawn for specific confection designs. But Hugh's words of her works just being imitations rang in her head. she was still unsure of what to make for the competition. Later, Jonas comes into her carriage and applauds her work in progress. But his motives are a little too much, as he pulls her in, looking to steal a kiss. But she quickly slaps him away. She straight up tells him that she doesn't love him, which is pretty fair. He then turns around saying he'd hoped she'd fall in love with him, but he just apologizes and leaves. Later that night, Kathy has a word of advice for Anne. Even though Jonas says that he loves her, Kathy doesn't want his words to go to Anne's head. She gets pouty, saying her master would never fall for someone like her, but then quickly blushes with Anne figuring out she's actually in love with Jonas. Anne then cheers her on, believing love between a human and fairy is lovely, but this just makes Kathy dip out. This love makes Anne wonder what Xiao's actual relationship with Liz was, and why her chest suddenly began feeling so tight. But Anne herself denied any feelings. She knows Xiao is only with her because she has his wing, and this will all end when they reach Lewiston. Wiping her forehead, Anne finished her hard work. She still had second thoughts, remembering how Hugh crushed her previous work, but she assured herself that this was fine. She had to let the piece dry, so she decided to look at the scenery until Xiao joined her. He felt it was strange, since when he had first met her at the fairy market, she always smelled of the sweetness of silver sugar, but he never understood why, until now, knowing the scent had always come from her hands. Then Jonas suddenly came out to congratulate her on finishing her piece. He then ran over to her wagon, and getting on, she spots some wolves chasing her horse. Jonas then says if she had just married him, he wouldn't have had to resort to something like this. And oh man, on that horse is Kathy spilling scraps to lure in the wolves, and she throws it all over Anne as well. As Jonas takes off with Anne's cart, Anne and Xiao find themselves surrounded. Anne begins begging him to go after her entry piece, but he refuses, knowing she'd die if he did, and he protects her while slaying the wolves. After defeating all the wolves, Anne sits depressed, wondering why Xiao didn't go after Jonas. She already knew the answer, but even so, she didn't want to let him have the sugar confection. She cried, claiming Xiao only protected her so his wing wouldn't get damaged. But Xiao had no words for her pain. Eventually, it rained, so she took shelter in the wagon Jonas left behind. Inside, she saw her mother's confectionery designs, and wondered why Jonas had them, to which Xiao answered Jonas likely had intended to enter the exhibition all along. So first, he stole her designs, but was unable to recreate the steps. That's why he instead contrived to steal Anne's work and head to Lewiston.
Raccoon! That's a raccoon. Look at him. Raccoon, come here. Come here. Come here. Hold on, let me leash it. Let me leash the raccoon. Come here. Come here, my little baby, my baby. Come here, little baby, little baby. Come here. Mommy's... I'm not gonna do that. Come here, you got a new friend, a raccoon.
Anne then opened a barrel and found her stolen sugar. Kathy must have been the one who stole it, since she has the power to turn invisible. Then Jonas estimated the amount of silver sugar she used to make her piece, and loaded it into Anne's cart in advance, and stole her wagon with the finished piece inside. Anne wondered how Xiao could know this, and he simply answered, "That's how humans are." Anne then came up to Xiao to hand him his wing back. The exhibition is the day after tomorrow, and Jonas will have already reached Lewiston. It's too late to try to get her piece back. He then asked if she was satisfied with this, and reasonably she shouted, of course she's not. But there's nothing she can do, even with him here, so she's going to set him free and he can go elsewhere. Xiao accepted it and took off, so now Anne was all alone. Sitting in front of the falling rain, she apologized to her mother for failing to send her spirit to the heavens. She cried, asking why her mother left her all alone. The next day, Anne woke up to bright sunshine, her gaze fixed on post-rain blueberries, with one in particular beginning to glow. With the fairy appearing, Anne reached out, admiring how pretty she was. The fairy happily greeted Anne, the human who allowed her to be born. And then suddenly Xiao appeared to speak on this phenomenon. The little fairy, Lucelle Almine, greeted Xiao, knowing he was just like her. but he simply told her to go where she likes, and to never approach humans, because they capture their kind, steal their freedom, and force them into servitude. Lucelle was confused because Anne was also human, but Xiao explained she's different. With that warning, Lucelle thanked him and took off happily. Anne then gave Xiao a serious expression, making him wonder what's wrong. She's unsure why he's still here, so he tells her she hasn't kept her promise to him yet. She promised to make him a sugar confection. So, wiping her tears, she's going to do it, because she promised, after all.
Shit, my hunger's going down very fast. Oh shit, I'll get some cooked food. Food cook.
Herself up, she begins crafting her work, all for Xiao, who came back to her. Lifting the sheet covering the piece, Xiao is surprised to find Anne created a model after Lucelle. Anne knows it's a bit small, but she assures him it's her truest sugar confection. The word he has for it is beautiful. He then holds it up to stare at it against the sunset, and Anne asks to touch his wing, to which he agrees. When she holds it, she runs her fingers across, feeling how warm it is. After pulling away, he asks her once again if this sugar confection belongs to him. She agrees, so he'll do as he pleases with it. With the carriage ready, he suddenly carries her inside because they're leaving for Lewiston. They're going to travel through the night to arrive by morning. Definitely flustered, she wonders why Xiao is doing this for her, to which he answers, since she gave him back his wing, she's no longer his master. So, this is their chance to actually become friends. Anne's eyes widen, asking if that's really what he wants. And of course, he's got a coolly answer, I don't know, while shrugging. At the sugar confectionery exhibition, Jonas stands nervously with Anne's stolen piece. They then announce the arrival of King Edmund II, and after he and his wife take their seats, they notice the commotion of a carriage running through the crowd, but Xiao stops it right before the guards. Anne runs in, ready to enter as well, but the guards stop her and tell Viscount Hugh Mercury gives her permission. Anne is surprised to discover his true identity as the head of the Mercury Workshop School and the kingdom's current Silver Sugar Viscount. With her taking her place, Jonas makes some snide remarks, and man, do I hate this guy. He has the nerve to insult her piece for being small when he couldn't even make his own. This guy's trash. But with Xiao watching, Anne is determined to win. Viscount Mercury then called to unveil, so all the competitors displayed their works before the king. King Edmund made the call to have both Jonas and Anne bring their works before him. The king had a strange feeling about the works, and asked the Viscount for his opinion. Viscount Mercury commented that it seemed like the two pieces had been made by the same artisan, given how alike they are, which caused Jonas to shudder in fear. The king preferred the small piece Anne presented, thinking its beauty could shatter in an instant. Ephemeral, yet so full of life. He claimed to have never seen a work so beautiful. His wife, however, felt the sugar confection for display as the centerpiece at the festival needed to be large and spectacular. This makes sense to King Edmund, so he announces Jonas Anders as the winner. And man, this guy has the nerve to scoff at Anne. However, the next important step was to verify the authenticity of the sugar Jonas refined. And inside the barrels, they only find Mithril passed out from eating all of the sugar. Mithril suddenly woke up, begging the king for forgiveness, claiming he was just a lowly labor fairy serving Jonas, and that Jonas is so bad at making silver sugar, he couldn't craft the required amount. Jonas screamed that this was a conspiracy and grabbed Anne, explaining that Mithril was her servant, and blamed her for making Mithril consume all the sugar. Anne then got out of his grip to speak the truth that Jonas had stolen her piece. The two begin fighting, so Viscount Mercury has a way for them to prove themselves. He's gonna have them both attempt to replicate one of the wings on the winning piece. Anne is certainly confident, but scumbag Jonas isn't so certain. Midway through their work though, the Viscount stops them, as it's obvious Jonas's wings are a terrible disgrace. Seeing Anne's though, he does feel they resemble the winning pieces, and even King Edmund thinks the winner should obviously be Anne. But with a closer look, the two realize the wings Anne made are still different from the winning piece. So, the king ends this year's competition with no winner. Anne tries to address the Viscount, but he tells her there's no need for formalities and to simply call him Hugh. She wondered why they determined the winning piece wasn't made by her, and Hugh explained improving her technique actually worked against her. The butterfly she made just now wasn't anything she copied from anywhere else. It was clearly 100% original. Anne then began tearing up, thinking of her mother as she was praised for her own original style. The queen then told her attendant to tell Anne that she hopes she competes again next year, as she's looking forward to her work. Hugh is left in charge of Jonas's punishment, so he asks Anne what it should be. Anne walks over to him, commanding Jonas to stand up, and she smacks the shit out of him. Oh yeah, she feels better, and I do too. And now he's bruised and ridiculed in front of everyone. Sifting through the crowd, she finds Xiao to tell him she's going to enter again next year, and to give him the confection she promised, only for him to turn around and say it looks unpalatable, because he wants something made by a silver sugar master. She already told him she'd become one next year, and that's when he told her he'd finally taste her work. So, until she becomes a silver sugar master, he'll stay with her. He then pulls her close to give her a light kiss on the hand. And of course, Mithril has to ruin the moment. Anne apologizes for thinking that even for a second that he had eaten silver sugar. He accepted it, and it didn't really bother him much because he had actually been sleeping inside her cart ever since the little scuffle. And with a peaceful end to the day, they ride off to their next destination. Just like I wish you'd ride along with me by liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Here on my Shoujo Weekly, I've got plenty of fun stories for you with action, romance, and pretty faces. So come on, you gotta subscribe, that way we can vibe.
Scary faces? That looks like goddamn fucking... That looks like Dream XD. Shit. Why me? Cat, please let me go. Please let me go. I wanna leave. I wanna leave. I wanna go home. I wanna go home. Please let me leave. Oh, let's go.
Trying all the different shops in Lewiston, Anne wanted to go to one more. However, she was surprised that the famous confectionery shop of Alf Hingley, a man said to rival the Silver Sugar Viscount, had moved. She decided to head towards the town of Westel, north from here, to sell some of her work, since in the town of Lewiston she'd probably get no business competing against actual Silver Sugar masters. They then arrived at a bit of a rundown confectionery shop, a place Anne seemed particularly interested in. Inside, she couldn't take her eyes away from one of the most beautiful pieces she had ever seen. Mithril then spotted a nodding fairy and tried to introduce himself, but the fairy Benjamin just quickly went back to sleep. Watching the two banter, Anne didn't notice the confectionery in front of her was slowly getting pulled away, until she looked over, coming face to face with a shrouded man. The man tried to run away with the piece but fell and broke it, quickly running away past Xiao, staring at the confectionery dust. The shop owner is upset at Anne, not knowing the other man was the cause of it. Even with Mithril trying to plead for her case, it's meaningless since Benjamin slept through the whole event. The man then gets closer and closer to Anne, and remembers she was the girl invited to come back by the king at the exhibition. Knowing her talent, he's decided to have her compensate him through labor. Xiao then pulls her, saying there's no need. But the man also pulls, saying he's not letting her go until he's paid back. So, Xiao draws his blade. But with Anne looking back and forth at the both of them, she decides to end the arguments and just work for the man. She doesn't believe it'll take long to make one sugar confection. Plus, it's her opportunity to learn how he made the beautiful piece from earlier. So, Anne began her work for the shop owner, Mr. Cat, working all day with Xiao watching her until she crashed on the bed. The next day, she and Mr. Cat worked just as hard, because the new piece replacement was due in 2 days. Also, we learned Cat isn't his actual name, just a nickname someone gave him, but now people know it more than his real name, and he hates it. Xiao questions why Cat doesn't have any sugar confections on display, given he's supposed to be running a business here. Cat replies things are fine the way they are, as he makes enough to eat on his own. The buyer for the particular piece he's making now is using it for a wedding. Anne was shocked to hear the piece was only 50 Bane, when it should be a more luxury item. Kat then answered that he only makes things for people he wants to make them for, but not all of them can afford to pay a high price. The person buying this sugar confection is a cobbler's daughter. Even at 50 Bane, the price will be a difficult purchase for them. With their work still not finished, they somehow run out of silver sugar. Anne has prepared a batch that should be ready tomorrow, so Kat calls it a night. Anne lies in bed, wondering if what they have will truly be enough. She then pulls out apples to prepare more, but it's so cold her hands can barely take it. Beginning the heat prep, she accidentally drops her rock, and is surprised to find Shao standing before her. Lighting up the fire, he tells her she didn't come back to bed, so he came to check and see why. Anne explains she wanted to prepare another barrel of sugar because if they were to run out, the piece wouldn't finish on time. Seeing her freeze, we're reminded once again that fairies cannot feel the cold, but they can feel warmth a little. It gives the same sensation as touching something fluffy. Anne then suddenly blushes, with Shao breathing on her hands to warm them. Her big eyes glimmer as she watches, but when the fire crackles, she quickly thanks him and says she's fine. Only, her red face tells us her heart is pounding. The next morning, Kat is surprised to find the barrel full of sugar. He then closes in on Anne again, telling her to have breakfast because an artisan's body is their greatest asset. Afterwards, the two of them get to work, until this noblewoman, Viscountess Clay, barges in despite Mithril and Benjamin trying to hold her back. She apparently heard he was making a sugar confection for a cobbler's daughter, and demanded to buy their piece for an exorbitant higher price. However, Kat had already told her several times he'd never sell her anything. The man made pieces for her servants, so she questioned why he wouldn't make anything for her daughter. Kat responded that she needed to remember how poorly she treated those servants, and even if the king bowed his head for one of his pieces, he still wouldn't make one for her. With the Viscountess kicked out, they spotted her driver as the man who destroyed Kat's original piece. Anne was determined to make sure no one would ruin this next one. Eventually, the new one was finished, and Kat wanted Anne to be the one to deliver it in the morning. He wanted her to see the expression of the person receiving it as a reward for her hard work, and she joyfully accepted. That night, though, the man working under the Viscountess snuck in to nab it again, but Anne was ready right behind him. He tried escaping, but Shao was behind the next door, and Kat behind the other. The man then attempted to destroy the piece again, but it was only Mithril and Benjamin underneath holding up sticks. So, both Kat and the thief were confused about where the confection was. Turns out, Anne delivered the confection before dinner last night, then set up the fake piece and laid in wait for the thief. Kat apologized for accusing Anne of breaking the first piece, but Anne was fine, especially having seen the joyful expression on the cobbler's daughter's face. Knowing she was heading to Westel, Kat offered Anne his winter clothes, since he was about to close shop here and move down south, tired of Lewiston's winters. With Anne about to take off, Kat tells her she should see Hugh since she's heading to Westel. The two of them apparently trained together at the same confectionery workshop. She was surprised this guy was actually a silver sugar master, since there's no one on the list named Kat. But, as he said before, that's just a nickname. He then introduces himself as Alf Hingley, and this blows Anne's mind, especially thinking about how this artist whom she admires has been calling her a little brat the entire time. However, Alf sternly told her that if she's an artist, she should never look up to anyone. An artist is one of a kind, and second to absolutely no one. Riding off, Anne felt like Hugh had told her the same thing, that she shouldn't ape anyone else, and was thankful for what she learned from Kat. In Westel, Anne tried selling confectionaries through her pop-up shop, but not even a single piece has sold so far. Elsewhere, Hugh gives Downing a gift for his granddaughter's wedding. Downing mentions how he was hoping to see Anne again someday, so that way he could see her lovely fairy again. Turns out, Hugh had already met with her a few days ago, offering to take her in, but she refused, saying she wanted to walk on her own 2 feet. Downing laughed hearing this, knowing she refused an invitation from both the Mercury Workshop and the Silver Sugar Viscount. That felt so like her. Anne actually returned back to Lewiston, where a restaurant owner made sense of her bad sales in Westel. The domain is under the Silver Sugar Viscount, so outsiders tend not to do well business-wise there in the first place. Now understanding defeat, Anne agreed in a nervous sweat. While Shal and Mithril bicker over how stupid the decision was, with all the people staring at them though, The restaurant owner tells them there's nothing wrong with humans and fairies sitting at the same table, so if they have a problem, they can leave. Knowing business will be hard here in Lewiston given the peak season of sales through Pool Soul Day coming up, the owner actually suggests a coastal town south of here named Felix, under Duke William Alburn. Due to some political events, Lord Downing explains House Alburn was allotted land under direct royal control. Revenue must be given from them to the royal family, and as proof of their loyalty, Duke Alburn must visit Lewiston once a month. Hugh is actually good friends with William, but when his father passed...
Okay, guys, so right now I am touching up a little bit of the mansion that's going to be built pretty soon. When I get enough wood. I also need to plant some trees. I'll plant them, I promise.
He took on the role of those conditions. However, because William hasn't been visiting Lewiston lately, Lord Downing is looking to crush him, stating it's an act of rebellion, something Hugh wasn't so eager to hear. Turning back to the restaurant, Anne learns Duke Alburn had been looking for a sugar artisan. If this artisan can create the piece he desires, then he'll pay 1,000 crests as a reward. And on top of that, with the Duke being a descendant of one of the previous kings, his acknowledgement would give an artisan prestige. So, they headed to Philax, the town that flourishes through trade as Highland's greatest port town. However, Shell knows all that money is swallowed up by Lewiston through their agreement, and once a month, Duke Philax must go see King Edmund. Inside the bleak castle, Anne and another artisan are asked to wait to have their peace.
Hey, yo, bro, what? I was specifically signing out of the Minecraft so I don't get killed. Да. Не надо. Окей. Я не хочу сильно. Я не хочу сильно.
How many babies?
Please play this game for 10 minutes
Well,
and you will be
let's
addicted to it. First, you can
There's no one on the list named Cat, but, as he said before, that's just a nickname. He then introduces himself as Alf Hingley, and this blows Anne's mind, especially thinking about how this artist whom she admires has been calling her a little brat the entire time. However, Alf sternly told her that if she's an artist, she should never look up to anyone. An artist is one of a kind, and second to absolutely no one. Riding off, Anne felt like Hugh had told her the same thing, that she shouldn't ape anyone else, and was thankful for what she learned from Kat. In Westall, Anne tried selling confectionaries through her pop-up shop, but not even a single piece has sold so far. Elsewhere, Hugh gives Downing a gift for his granddaughter's wedding. Downing mentions how he was hoping to see Anne again someday, so that way he could see her lovely fairy again. Turns out, Hugh had already met with her a few days ago, offering to take her in, but she refused, saying she wanted to walk on her own 2 feet. Downing laughed hearing this, knowing she refused an invitation from both the Mercury Workshop and the Silver Sugar Viscount. That felt so like her. Anne actually returned back to Lewiston, where a restaurant owner made sense of her bad sales in Westall. The domain is under the Silver Sugar Viscount, so outsiders tend not to do well business-wise there in the first place. Now understanding defeat, Anne agreed in a nervous sweat. While Shal and Mithril bicker over how stupid the decision was, with all the people staring at them though, the restaurant owner tells them there's nothing wrong with humans and fairies sitting at the same table, so if they have a problem, they can leave. Knowing business will be hard here in Lewiston given the peaks of sales through Pool Soul Day coming up, the owner actually suggests a coastal town south of here named Felix, under Duke William Alburn. Due to some political events, Lord Downing explains House Alburn was allotted land under direct royal control. Revenue must be given from them to the royal family, and as proof of their loyalty, Duke Alburn must visit Lewiston once a month. Hugh was actually good friends with William, but when his father passed, he took on the role of those conditions. However, because William hasn't been visiting Lewiston lately, Lord Downing is looking to crush him, stating it's an act of rebellion, something Hugh wasn't so eager to hear. Turning back to the restaurant, Anne learns Duke Alburn had been looking for a sugar artisan. If this artisan can create the peace he desires, then he'll pay 1,000 crests as a reward. And on top of that, with the Duke being a descendant of one of the previous kings, his acknowledgement would give an artisan prestige. So, they headed to Phylax, the town that...
Hello, fucker. Don't kill me now, please. I'll go kill some chickens. I need some food.
flourishes through trade as Highland's greatest port town. However, Shao knows all that money is swallowed up by Lewiston through their agreement, and once a month, Duke Phylax must go see King Edmund. Inside the bleak castle, Anne and another artisan are asked to wait to have their pieces evaluated. The Duke then suddenly appears out of nowhere, telling them there's no need to bow, but to only...
William Afton? You mean the fucking Five Nights at Freddy's character? Holy we got a crossover episode, everybody! It's William Afton!
show their confections. With two being presented, seeing her work, Anne is asked to stay while the other man is asked to leave. Observing it as a statue of a fairy, the Duke asked why she made it, and Anne answered it's modeled after one of her friends traveling with her. He coldly accepted her answer, and told her she could stay in the castle. She need only make a sugar confection that satisfies his expectations. She then asks what he wants made, so he presents the portrait of a beautiful fairy woman, one he wants Anne to give form to. As one of the servants leads Anne to the workshop, he remarks that her answer calling a fairy a friend was well said, as the Duke hates the practice of controlling fairies. That's why there are no fairy servants in the castle. After setting their stuff down in the designated workshop, Anne and Shao headed towards one of the towers that had another portrait of the fairy, but wasn't expecting scumbag Jonas and two cronies behind him to be here. As she walked past them attempting to head inside, Jonas had the nerve to tell his boys she set him up, with all of them holding the honor of the Radcliffe School under their names. They were set on not letting Anne get away with disrespecting Jonas. However, with Shao drawing his blade, the three boys nervously left, giving the classic "we'll be the ones to win" kind of speech. Yup, more characters for me to hate. After seeing the portraits, Anne began her work. 3 days passed and the piece was almost finished. Mithril commented on the fact that Shao was always off somewhere being sentimental every time she got busy. Apparently, he used to live in a castle just like this one. Hearing that, Anne wondered if he was talking about with Liz. Getting distracted, she accidentally wiped blue pigment all over her face. So she went outside to wash it off by a well, and staring at her reflection in the bucket water, Shao's previous words of Liz's hair turning pale gold and freckles disappearing rang through her mind. She began to wonder if she would truly turn as beautiful as Shao said. She couldn't imagine it. She felt like she'd always stay scrawny and gangly like a scarecrow. She then wondered what Liz was like, but was somehow certain she must have been beautiful. After all, someone as beautiful as Shao calls her beautiful. Feeling her heart beating, she then shrieked out loud, wondering why she felt jealous over a woman she never met, and began vigorously washing her face. Shao then spotted her, joking about if she rubbed her nose that hard it would come off. Anne had forgotten to bring something to dry her face with, so Shao slowly dragged one of his fingers across, causing her to jolt back and gasp. He then came up close to her face, only making it worse, so she ran away, bumping into Jonas. She told him her piece wasn't finished, so it wasn't ready for him to steal. But he was cocky, saying he had no need for it as he finished his own yesterday, along with the other two. Duke Alburn viewed all three of them and kicked the other two out, only permitting Jonas to stay, only telling Jonas it showed promise, but he needed to increase the level of accuracy. Jonas is supposedly also the first person the Duke allowed to stay in the castle after showing his piece. This put his ego through the roof, as he showed off the tower he was upgraded to staying in. After finishing her piece, Anne immediately knocked out, so Shao picked her up and tucked her into bed, whispering, "You did well, Scarecrow." With the Duke staring at her piece the next day, he told her it wasn't right, but the feeling was much better than Jonas's. So, she just needed to increase the accuracy to satisfy him. He ordered her to stay in one of the other vacant towers, and now there was no need to take in any more artisans. Being shown her quarters, Jonas was of course surprised to find Anne had also passed as well. Having to compete again, neither of the two were willing to back down. Hearing the ringing of a bell, Anne can tell Jonas is calling the Duke to see his work again. So, Mithril decided to go take a look, but Shao returned back with him. He apparently wanted to play a prank on Jonas because he looked depressed. With Anne's work finished, she decided to call the Duke in to examine it, but he wasn't pleased. He expressed cold fury, saying that she and Jonas didn't understand, and stormed out. That night, as she stared at the painting of the fairy, she tried to make sense of what wasn't working. Duke Alburn had even said it wasn't different from the last piece she made. This is when Shao hypothesized that maybe the Duke wasn't looking for just a confection, otherwise hers should have sufficed. Despite all this, Anne wasn't discouraged, now attempting to make her piece look more realistic. Finishing once again, she decided to go look at the portrait to make sure it was truly accurate, but stumbled upon a disheveled Jonas exiting his room with a bruise on his face. He was shaking, having given up all hope because he couldn't understand the Duke's request. He wanted to quit so badly. He shouted at Anne and went back into his room. Presenting her piece to the Duke again, he just kept saying it was completely wrong, but unclear with the fine details. He just kept saying everything about it was wrong. Grabbing what he called a sham of an imitation, he shattered it, being unable to stand looking at the piece any further, only telling Anne to give it form. She stayed sitting depressed where the Duke left her. Both Shao and Mithril thought giving up was the correct course of action. However, remembering the gleam in the Duke's eyes when he had first seen her work gave her confidence to keep going. Shao had lived over 100 years at this point, so he admits to Anne that over time he's become a lot more bitter. With Anne thinking of him and Liz, she asked Shao what she was like. Thinking back, he remembered her blue eyes, long hair, and how mature she was, also quiet and thoughtful. Hearing that, Anne felt she herself was quite different from Liz. She thought things like, "I'm not pretty, I'm childish, I'm boisterous, and I never think hard enough about anything." Shao then turned towards her, shocked to see a tear dripping from her eye. She then went out to compose herself, but coming back, that piece of shit Jonas had come with Mithril's wing captive. He squeezed, causing Mithril to scream. Jonas's demand? He wanted Anne to tell Shao she didn't want him with her anymore, and that he needed to leave this castle and never appear before her again. Oh my god, why do we keep dealing with this guy? I hate him. Get him off the show, please! He told her he'd give the wing back if she listened, but if she told Shao, he'd rip the wing to shreds. Walking up the stairs, Shao was still reflecting on why Anne had asked about Liz and why she cried earlier. But nothing could prepare anyone for her telling him exactly what Jonas told her to, without even looking at his face. He asked why, but with her shaking, she told him it was her fault, and to not ask any further. So, he accepted and took off. Jonas wasn't done with her, however. He wanted the both of them to meet with Duke Alburn, where she wouldn't be allowed to oppose anything he had to say. With Jonas gone, Mithril apologized for being so careless. It was all his fault that the man Anne loved was gone now. Anne tried to deny her love for Shao at first, but to Mithril, it was obvious. So she sat, bawling while uttering Shao's name. Sitting below the moonlight, Shao felt that perhaps everything always suddenly ended like this. Wandering the next day, he wondered where he should go next, until a squad of fairy hunters looking for a top-quality companion fairy surrounded him. However, with Shao in a bad mood, he quickly dispatched all three of them. Before he could go for a killing blow, Hugh stopped him, saying if he killed a human, he'd get no protection. Hugh explained he was here because he had business at Phylax Castle, because the Duke right now is in a lot of trouble. We turned to the Duke's room, where Jonas asked the Duke to let him quit. Going near the fireplace, the Duke reminded him quitting was not permitted, and he pulled out the sword he used to beat Jonas with last time. Jonas pleaded as hard as he could to let Anne do all the work instead, so she wagered she would complete it without fail, something the Duke could agree to. Afterwards, Jonas handed the wing back and left in defeat. Heading to the castle, Hugh explained that the Duke of Phylax hasn't visited Lewiston for the last year and a half, meaning he's been shirking his royal duty. Earl Downing finds it unforgivable, and has requested the Duke's subjugation. The king was overcome and had to give him permission. So, if Hugh isn't able to reason with William to explain himself, the Earl will come with soldiers, putting everyone in the castle in danger. Hugh doesn't want his dear friend to die, but before he became the Silver Sugar Viscount, he would even often make sugar confections for the woman by the Duke's side. That's why he knows William isn't a bad guy. In the Duke's room, Hugh invited him to visit Lewiston, explaining the severity of the situation. But the Duke just lied depressed, saying he wasn't going. Then, Hugh brought up Lady Christina to come with him if he wanted, making William get up, threatening Hugh to leave immediately. So, Hugh exited. During all this, Anne kept observing the portrait, now asking Mithril why the confection had to be modeled after this fairy in particular. The daylight then shined over the portrait, making Anne realize something she'd been missing the entire time. This fairy still had both her wings attached, meaning she'd never been made to serve anyone. The two then hatched up a plan. Mithril would leave the castle to go find Shao and tell him the truth, while Anne would ask the Duke more personal questions about the fairy in the portrait. Getting an audience with the Duke alone, Anne asked to learn more information about the fairy in the portrait, believing it was necessary to give the confection form. To the Duke, however, this greatly disturbed his memories, so if she learned everything she could and was still unable to create it, she'd have to pay with her life. Even hearing his threat, he was fully prepared to succeed. So with that, he confessed the fairy's name was Christina, or Lialis Sil Eril, and got up suddenly to ask why he didn't call her by her fairy name. But this was actually a desire from Christina. From the moment she was born, she had wanted a human-like name. She gazed out idly at the wave crests from which she'd been born. He felt her being caught and hurt by humans was lamentable, so he brought her back to the castle. But, and...
We'll wait. Let the ketchup.
Gazed out idly at the wave crests from which she'd been born. He felt her being caught and hurt by humans was lamentable, so he brought her back to the castle. But Anne gasped hearing how she died and vanished a year and a half ago, and now it was apparent the Duke was still in love with her. Back in the carriage, Hugh asked Shao how long fairies born of the sea live. Apparently sea fairies' lives are unstable, so it varies. Some live only a few. Even with sugar confections, the best ones made by someone at Hugh's level could only extend a fairy's life by a few weeks to a few months. Understanding the gravity of this, Hugh now knew William's pain from losing his lover. Anne then asked the Duke if she could bring her tools into his room. She wants to ask questions about Christina while she works to give it form. Back at Hugh's carriage, they suddenly stop, knowing the Earl is just ahead of them. He tries to reason with the Earl at camp, but to no avail. Salim then came up to Shao with a canister, containing Mithril, who had eaten all the soup inside. Mithril's eyes watered as he quickly explained everything that happened in detail, and how Anne had been aching to see him this entire time. Shao then shoved Mithril back into the canister and bolted out towards the castle. Anne worked, explaining she wanted to get Lady Christina correct in every facet, from height to expression, thinking of how the person most important to herself always seemed to look at her in a bad mood. Eventually, one of the servants came to the door, telling the Duke more than 300 servants had surrounded the castle. However, the Duke only told his servant to tell them to wait because he had to see this confection through. Anne asked why this was happening, but was simply commanded by the Duke to work, threatened even. To Duke Alburn, Christina was the only one who ever understood him. Anne continued to work, wanting to make the one thing he desired, and to depict Christina's feelings exactly as he remembered. Then suddenly, Shao appeared at the door, huffing from his exhaustive hurry. He then quickly grabbed onto Anne, saying he would be taking her back, and that her idiocy was astounding, making her tear up in joy. She apologized for the horrible things she said, but Shao understood. The most important thing was to leave the castle before the attack began. The Duke, of course, wasn't going to let her leave. However, Shao drew his blade ready to cut him down. Shao was then shocked to hear Anne was serious about continuing her work, but he smiled and withdrew his blade. With the castle completely surrounded, Anne still worked, and with the confection truly taking form, the Duke's eyes began to glimmer. The true purpose he requested something exactly like her was to hopefully gaze at it and bring Christina back to life. He still remembers the day she disappeared right in front of him. Her form had turned into motes of light and melted into thin air. He had it set in his heart to give her form once again. Shao simply told him it was impossible, and the only thing that could be born from this piece is a strange, warped fairy, which deeply upset Duke Alburn. The castle then began shaking from the attempted siege outside, but Anne was still determined to finish. Despite Shao disapproving, he accepted her wish with a soft touch. He decided to protect her desires by fending off the soldiers outside the room, putting in the last pieces of Christina's beautiful translucent eyes. The Duke cried at the perfect depiction of his beloved. This is exactly what he wanted, even with him acknowledging how foolish he might sound. Despite this, Anne gave him belief, saying no one has proven for sure a fairy couldn't be brought back to life, and these words of comfort made him happy. Handing Anne her reward and acknowledging her talent, she ran to Shao, tripping down the stairs and falling into his arms. With Hugh and the soldiers heading upstairs to subjugate the Duke, Shao then held Anne close. He admitted he was so worried about her, and looking up at him, she told him she did want him to stay by her side. Back at the restaurant in Lewiston, the owner had heard about Anne's skills being acknowledged, and that now the Duke of Phylax would be living under the supervision of Earl Downing. A happy end to the story. On Pool Sol Day, Anne lit a candle for her mother and set down the confection she created in her honor. With that, the three then enjoyed the food stalls of the festival. Heading back to Lewiston, Anne reminisced on first arriving in the town nearly a year ago, but had to stop her horse at the sudden appearance of another oncoming one. Realizing it was Kat, Shao made a sly joke about cats hibernating here in the fall. Back at the restaurant, the owner asks what Anne's been up to in the past year. Turns out, after wintering in Lewiston, they had gone around visiting little towns and villages selling sugar confections. So now, she's back here for the annual exhibition. Sitting down with Kat, he asked if she noticed something strange with the sugar apples this year. And she did. Every sugar apple tree they saw had poorly set flowers. This year's crop was terrible. Kat then explained to avoid potential chaos between factions of different schools, Hugh decreed this year the harvest and refinement of sugar apples by individuals would be forbidden. Instead, all sugar apples throughout the kingdom would be harvested in the name of the Silver Sugar Viscount, then refined. And only those sugar artisans who participate in the process will be allotted silver sugar commensurate with their labor. But it isn't as simple as asking Hugh for sugar. The Radcliffe workshop had already gathered a majority of all the sugar apples throughout the kingdom, while the Page and Mercury workshops had taken the remains. So the only way to obtain silver sugar is to assist in refinement at one of the schools. However, Anne hadn't heard about this at all. The members of the Radcliffe school should have informed her, but instead, they only harassed her at every town they were in, which frustrated Kat to no end. They're definitely jealous of her recognition by the Duke of Phylax. So, they made their way to the main Radcliffe school, where we see Jonas again, who jumps at the sight of Anne. But the boy in charge of reception, Sammy Jones, pulls him out of the way to welcome the famous Alf Hingley. However, as any of us would expect, he's completely rude to Anne because she's a woman. After learning she's Anne Halford, he got more stern, remembering she's the one that set Jonas up last year. There's also a rumor that she seduced Hugh and potentially the Duke of Phylax to earn their favors. Silently in the back, Shao was getting ready to draw his sword on Sammy. But everything came to peace with the arrival of Keith Powell, who's apparently acquainted with Kat. After greeting Anne kindly, he was stunned, fixated on Shao's beautiful looks. Even though the rules here are worker fairies only, Keith will allow Shao to stay as long as he allows himself to model for his piece this year for the exhibition. Anne is about to turn Keith down, not wanting to objectify Shao, but Shao stops her, willing to do what it takes to help her get into the school. With Anne and her friends being shown to their room, she wonders about Keith's identity and why he's so valued here. At the call of a morning rooster, Anne scurries to be ready quickly, so Shao compares her to a squirrel. She's happy to hear it since a squirrel is much cuter than a scarecrow. However, with her lack of calmness, Shao only sees her as a squirrel darting around for food. Looking at her mirror, she wondered if Shao would prefer her hair down better. He then suddenly comes up to her and touches it, saying it looks as it always does. No issues at all. Seeing his face, she definitely got flustered and ran out the room. On her way to work, Keith opens his door to greet her. It turns out he knew her mother Emma. He had met her when he was about 4 or 5 years old, and was very surprised a female sugar master existed. His own father, Edward Powell, is also a silver sugar master, and recognizes that name, as Edward was the previous silver sugar viscount. So that's why Keith is recognized by many. Edward served as a wonderful viscount for over 20 years, but died 6 months before Anne's mother due to illness. With Keith's father having come from the page school, Anne asked why he was here. Keith answered he didn't want to receive special treatment as his father's son, but instead, as just another artisan. However, people still treated him special here. He respected his father, but Keith felt his own situation was always uncomfortable and restrictive, especially while his father was alive. He couldn't even enter the exhibition, because if he had won, the critics would have gossiped that his victory was due to nepotism. And if he lost, they would have gossiped he was a failure despite being the Silver Sugar Viscount's son. But that ended last year. Now that the mourning period has ended, he can prove his talents. He then brought Xiao to his room, who was ready to fulfill his promise. However, Xiao was extremely displeased that the other members of the school didn't inform Anne about this year's situation. So as it stands, she doesn't even have silver sugar to work with at the moment. Learning this now, Keith commented the students here were cowardly and disgraceful, but he is glad Anne is entering this year, because he knows none of the other artisans will be competition for him. He then reveals some dark news. This may be Anne's last year to be an artisan if she doesn't become a silver sugar master, due to the jealousy she's garnered from artisans all around. Keith asks Xiao to keep this a secret from her so that she doesn't feel any additional pressure. He wants to compete with her fairly. Entering the workshop, Anne and Mithril are astonished to see the hustle and bustle of all the artists refining the sugar, but also that there wasn't a single other woman here. Kat then appeared, mentioning women are transgressors who turned their backs on the will of God, which is why they are not allowed to make the sacred food, sugar confections. When God created a woman and a man, the wish was for them to rule over the earth. However, the human woman fell in love with the king of fairies, and ended up vowing to serve him. The one who cleansed humanity of the woman's crimes and freed the world from the fairies was ancestor King Cedric, a story Anne wasn't really aware of, since she never attended church. Kat added it was just a story, but among artisans, it remained the reason that women shouldn't meddle in this work. But also, this work is physically demanding for women as well. Next to arrive was Master Marcus Radcliffe, Jonas, and Sammy. Kat didn't take too kindly to him, since Master Radcliffe's workshop was the very reason he and Anne were informed about this year's working decree so late. Master Radcliffe puts Kat in charge of overseeing the refinement as a whole, so he takes his leave. He then talks to Anne, and we learn he's also Jonas's uncle. The only words he has for her is to keep up with everyone else at the same pace. Otherwise, she won't be given any sugar. However, he's very harsh with Jonas, letting him know if he loses to Anne again, Keith will become the only candidate as the next head of the workshop. Getting into a work-ready outfit, Anne asks Kat for his orders. So, he sends her to one of the big cauldrons. But as she struggles to work, a man picks her up and takes her out, not wanting her to hurt herself. Elliot Collins introduces himself as an ally of all women, and he's also a silver sugar master who's standing in for the head of the Page Workshop. Next to introduce herself is the daughter of the Page Workshop headmaster, Bridget Page. She's Elliot's fiancée, but enough introductions. Anne has to get back to work, although she stops with all the guys staring at her, so Kat scolds them, saying anyone who's able should be allowed to work here. Watching her work, Bridget finds it odd that a woman is both being acknowledged as an artisan and allowed to work here. She calls it laughable and walks off. After work, an exhausted Anne gets in line for her dinner. Instead of serving her, Bridget just sighs, asking how a girl like her could dress like that. The rule is 1 plate per person. However, Anne has guests with her and would like plates for them too. Keith intervenes, giving permission. But when Xiao comes onto the scene, Bridget blushes with the beautiful fairy before her asking for a serving. When Anne and Xiao head out, Bridget couldn't help but stare. Inside their room, Xiao couldn't take his eyes off of Anne, who breathed a deep sigh of exhaustion. There was a knock on the door, where Jonas was given orders from his uncle to tell Anne where the sugar apples were. Staring at the apples in the barrel, Anne was tired. So tired, in fact, she decided to take a little nap, but woke up to Shao carrying her back. He laid her in bed and gave her a light kiss for the night. Remembering when she told him to leave her back at Felix's castle, he now understood perhaps he was the one who didn't want them to be separated. Stepping outside to get Anne some water, Bridget commented it was terrible she made him work late at night. She tried getting in Shao's way, saying if he didn't like serving Anne, he could serve her instead. She'd let him live in a nice room and even give him lots of sugar confections. Shao scoffed right past her, bluntly stating she only wants him as a pet, and closed the door on her. 6 days later, Anne had a scuffle at the refinery, getting shoved off the cauldron because she was taking too long. She just wanted the sugar to be high quality. However, Sammy mocked her, saying with this year's sugar being mass-produced, no one would care. Anne stood on her principles, questioning if every year's sugar after this would be made of inferior quality. Keith then pulled her away, attempting to calm Anne down. He reasoned that everything was being overseen by both Kat and Elliot, so they'd eventually fix things. This works, so Keith shifts the conversation to ask what piece Anne is going to make. She hadn't had time to even think about it, so she asked why Elliot wanted Shao as his model. He answered it's because the royal family tends to favor sugar confections with a fairy motif. If one visits the head temple of the Church of St. Lewiston Bell, there's a book about the royal family and sugar confections. Seeing Keith's artistic depiction of Shao, Anne thinks it's amazing how his essence truly comes through. Every piece has been crafted so delicately. She then questioned if she had made it. Would the results have been this good? Looking at the window, she spotted Shao with Bridget. But why? Bridget had discovered Shao wasn't actually serving Anne. Shao doesn't want to have any sort of conversation with her, but she stops him, and with tears, she runs into his body. Seeing this makes Anne clench her teeth. Bridget unloaded onto Shao that her fiancé was decided a long time ago by her father, and she didn't understand what love was. But seeing Shao, her heart raced so fast, she didn't know what to do. She confessed her love to him, and that's when Keith called Anne onto their next task. However, Shao pushed Bridget off. He asked her what she would have done if she were in love with someone like Kat or Keith. She admitted she would be too embarrassed to confess something like this. So once again, Shao understood she wasn't embarrassed now because he was just a fairy, being treated no different than a second-class citizen. If she wanted him, she had better steal his wing and give him an order for love. Walking with Keith, Anne was fixated on why Shao and Bridget were alone together. Keith noticed something was wrong, so he took her hand and told her they should go for a run. And with her cheering up, Shao walked in on them. Keith explained with them getting to work, she should run and leave her worries behind, which only left a stir in Shao's heart. In the evening, Anne decided to take a walk with Mithril to clear her mind, as things with her and Shao haven't been feeling right. For the past week, he spent just about every night modeling for Keith. Jonas and Kathy then appeared, with Kathy beginning her smack talk, but he quieted her. He declared that this year, he was going to make a proper piece, one that he truly wants to create. Seeing Anne's expression though, Jonas feels as if she doesn't even see him as competition. He's sure of it now. He hates her. Thinking about a piece she wants to create, she's now curious as to why the royal family favors fairy motif sugar confections. The next day, she and Shao headed to the church temple, but their silence together is unusually awkward. Shao thinks this meekness isn't like her. So, Anne brings up that she thought he'd be too busy on a date with Bridget today. However, Shao doesn't even know who that is. Anne then tries to jog his mind, saying the two of them embraced yesterday afternoon. Now realizing the blonde girl's name, he brings up that she kept chattering on about whether she'd buy him or not. So he told her if she wanted him, she'd better steal his wing. There have always been humans like that. Anne is relieved, thinking that was the reason he seemed out of sorts yesterday. But Shao responded if he had to pick a reason, the reason would be Anne. At the church, the priest declines their entry into the library because it's under renovation at the moment. The particular book she's looking for, however, is written in Old Highlandian script, something the priest believes she wouldn't be able to read anyways. After the priest leaves, Anne and Shao gaze up on the art on the ceiling that depicts their founding king, Cedric, versus the Fairy King. Shao then mentions the Fairy King's name, Riselva Cyril Sash. It's likely the obsidian he was born from had always known. He can even read the Old Highlandian script on the ceiling. It reads that King Cedric was the Fairy King's slave, a truth that makes Anne jolt. But the Fairy King, because of Cedric's bravery and sincerity, regarded him as a friend and set him free, and Cedric respected the Fairy King for his integrity and strength, and considered him a friend. The two kings searched for a path that fairies and humans could walk together, but while the humans revered King Cedric, and fairies felt the same for the Fairy King, the two races hated each other. War broke out. Destiny became twisted. The Fairy King was defeated and Cedric won. Cedric grieved the death of his friend very deeply. In memoriam, he had a sugar confection made in his friend's image and offered up a prayer. He wished that the world they dreamed of would one day come to pass. A power which brought great fortune came to dwell within that sugar confection. Anne was saddened, knowing the story the church taught about the woman who had fallen for the Fairy King was probably completely false. Something that's been rewritten for convenience's sake. That's history, isn't it? Shao didn't blame King Cedric for the state of the world though. He may have wanted fairies to coexist with humans, but he wasn't able to. So being the victor, the world became as it is. Shao felt the differences between the races were vast, but Anne didn't, at least for herself. Shao concludes the reasons the royal family favors fairy sugar confections are Cedric's regrets, an atonement for not being able to carry on his will. As he walked away, with Anne locked on to the glimmer of his wing, she's found it. Inspiration for this year's piece. Back in her room, she begins, wanting to give form to what the founding king and the Fairy King had held within them, the wish they shared. The days went by, with Anne working and crafting her piece. During break, Keith offered her a drink. She was a little extra exhausted because she had finished her piece last night, just in the nick of time, since the sugar confectionery exhibition is the day after tomorrow. Master Radcliffe then appeared, hearing she finished, and per regulations, he must conduct an inspection on her work. Entering her room, Mithril was trying to sneak a taste of her silver sugar. Apparently, all fairies can easily tell the difference between different sugars. And looking at the open barrel, Sammy stares at it for some reason. Anne then unleashed her piece, and everyone was taken aback seeing the climbing roses that symbolized the royal family, being wrapped within a fairy's wing like the crescent shape of the moon. Keith had confidence in his work. However, after seeing Anne's, he's a little uneasy now. Hearing this shocks Sammy. That night, Jonas came to her door. Apparently, Sammy told him Master Radcliffe was looking for her, and that she should go to the workroom. However, they were surrounded by Sammy and his men, with Master Radcliffe nowhere to be found. Jonas had no idea about this. Sammy then told him he found it infuriating that this girl was about to cheat her way to the royal medal. He hated the idea that she would be insulting Keith, so he was prepared to boil her hands in the pot. Kathy took this opportunity to free Jonas, and he ran out of the building into Anne's room to inform Shao. Shao then dipped immediately. Right before her hands reach the water, Shao makes it just in time to draw his blade on these bastards. Before slicing Sammy's head off, Anne begs him to stop. With the sword right on his neck, Shao swears to one day kill them all. After Sammy and his cronies leave, Shao blames himself for not being there for her, for allowing himself to be separated from her. She cried into his chest because she was just so scared, and he consoled her, telling Anne she was all right now. Later, Master Radcliffe apologized on behalf of his workshop, but they were all shocked to hear Jonas would be the one expelled from Radcliffe. Anne tried explaining it wasn't Jonas, but instead Sammy Jones. However, Master Radcliffe got angry because it was Sammy and the others who made the report. Oh my god. Now there's someone I hate more than Jonas. Master Radcliffe took Sammy's words seriously, given he had been working at this shop since the age of 12. He could never believe Sammy would lie to him. Mithril tried explaining Sammy was at fault as well, making Master Radcliffe only more angry. As he was about to punish Mithril, Shao stopped him, once again reiterating Sammy was at fault. So, Master Radcliffe kicked out Anne's party and Jonas's as well. Taking her leave, Keith and Kat came out to check on her, saying they'd make sure Sammy gets what he deserves. And as they exited, Bridget only stared at Shao. They went back to that one restaurant again, and with Jonas entering and leaving seeing Anne, she ran after him. She thanked him for saving her, but all he did was run off. Shao watched Anne sleep that night, and started to remember how happy she was when Keith had complimented her work. She was so excited then. Had there been no incident yesterday, the Radcliffe workshop might have become her home. But he's more relieved with things as they are now. He knew this was selfish. Mithril then came into the room to explain something serious had happened. The silver sugar in Anne's barrels was different. Mithril had a nibble just now and could tell the sugar wasn't Anne's, but the Radcliffe workshop's mass-produced sugar. Shao evaluated it himself and tossed it out of anger knowing the truth. He told Mithril to keep this a secret from Anne and to let her join the exhibition tomorrow regardless. He himself was going to go on a mission to find her silver sugar. Back at the Radcliffe workshop that night, Shao, Kat, and Keith visited Elliot. To absolve Anne of the bad sugar, they needed both proof and a witness that the sugar had been stolen, so they wanted a smooth talker like Elliot to help. He let them in, and they found his fiancée Bridget after many drinks complaining that everyone spoils Anne and gives her all the attention. However, she jolts up hearing Shao tell her she understood nothing. Anne did everything by herself, and never gave up no matter what. He then told Bridget the only one being spoiled was her, causing her to sit down depressed. Keith and Kat explained Anne's situation with the replaced sugar. They needed eyewitness proof, and the only one who had that was Bridget. She saw everything, who they were, what they did, and what happened to Anne's silver sugar. Shao demanded answers, but Bridget refused to give any. At the exhibition, Anne asked Mithril if Shao really had hiccups so badly that he went out to find herbs. She didn't quite believe it, even though Mithril was adamant that was the reason he wasn't here. Keith then arrived and apologized because Bridget wouldn't tell them what she knew, so Shao stayed behind to persuade her. He was truly saddened that he wouldn't be able to compete against Anne fairly. Anne was confused, but before Keith could explain, Hugh commanded him to stay in his position. A letter had come to
Then we wait until the lag stops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Hugh this morning had read that Anne Halford was not someone worthy of being called a sugar artisan. She had no skills in refining silver sugar, and the proof is that the silver sugar she brought is the mass-produced kind made during this year's special refining mandate. Keith tried to defend her, citing Hugh should know better than anyone. However, Earl Downing quieted him, stating that as long as there's an accusation, it should be investigated or else it'll brew trouble later. So, Anne gave them permission to inspect her barrels. Opening them up for inspection, Anne was distraught, seeing the sugar that was not hers. Master Radcliffe declared the obvious, which was that the sugar was the same kind as what was mass-produced at his workshop. Back in Bridget's room, Shao told her if she didn't answer, he'd cut her down. Bridget accepted though, knowing she held all the cards. Anne would fail to become a silver sugar master, and Shao would be disposed of as a human-killing fairy. He'd never see Anne again, which is exactly what she wanted. So, he offered his wing for the truth, and she held it against her cheek. She then commanded him to kiss her. So he did, and she lost herself, embracing him closely. No, no, no! This wasn't supposed to happen! Back at the exhibition, the people called for Anne's disqualification, and that piece of shit Sammy smirked at her downfall. The Earl commanded their silence. With the arrival of King Edmund II, hearing the news, the king very matter-of-factly told Anne if her sugar was nowhere to be found, she'd be disqualified. But before that, he asked to see her piece, not for an assessment, but simply because his wife asked to see it. So Anne unveiled the piece that truly captured everyone in awe. She then asked the king if there was any fairy he could trust. So they summoned their servant, Clifford. She broke a piece, causing everyone to gasp, but Anne knew fairies could taste the difference between silver sugars. Thus, Clifford ate it, remarking the taste to be quite delicious. He announced it to be made from exceptionally high-quality silver sugar, different from the mass-produced ones. Everyone was shocked she was willing to break her piece just to prove her innocence. After putting the cover back on, Anne was surprised to see Shao had arrived with Bridget. She was allowed an audience with the king, where she explained the whereabouts of Anne's sugar. She then pointed inside the tent that held the barrels with Sammy Jones's name on them. Sammy shuddered nervously as Bridget explained the barrels contained sugar not refined by him, but Anne Halford, certainly shocking Master Radcliffe. Hugh ordered Sammy's barrels be brought out. where Clifford verified the sugar was exactly the same as what was used in Anne's piece. Master Radcliffe ran to Sammy, begging for answers. Sammy apologized, feeling inadequate in his own work, but Master Radcliffe would not accept such shame brought upon his school. He begged the king for atonement, but King Edmund only responded by calling the workshop pathetic and to be gone from his sight. Then told Anne she no longer needed to leave. Anne thanked Bridget for the help. However, Bridget told her there was no need, since she got what she wanted in return. The exhibition then began, and everyone revealed their pieces. The king had taken notice of Keith's depiction of Shao, describing it as valiant and impeccable. He truly complimented Keith's piece, but an imitation of the real world could never compete with Anne's motif beyond this world. Even the fault where she had broken the flower appears beautiful in his eyes. Keith also agreed with him. So with that, King Edmund II announced Anne to receive this year's royal medal and bestowed her the title of Silver Sugar Master. Anne could hardly believe it, even with Mithril cheering by her side. Accepting the medal, she thought of how it honored her mother and swore to the king she would live as an artisan for all her life. After that, Keith congratulated her and swore he'd get next year's medal. Then they could compete again. Anne then thanked Keith for helping her push herself, but he said Shao was the one who needed to be thanked, since he had persuaded Bridget. Anne ran to show Shao the medal, which made him smile. He then responded, "You have acquired your future. Now, you don't need me anymore." Trying to walk away, Anne stopped him, asking what he was talking about. He told her he couldn't be with her anymore. She began shaking, asking if he didn't want to be with her anymore. They stood still, without him answering for a moment, until he suddenly embraced her. He whispered, "I didn't want to be separated." Then Anne fell to the floor, watching the man she loved enter into the carriage of another woman. She wondered why this was happening, so Elliot explained Shao gave up his wing to get the whereabouts of her silver sugar from Bridget. For Anne, he sold his freedom. Watching Shao enter the carriage, Anne tried running after him, but was stopped by a horse crossing. She kept running after, begging Shao not to go, but it was too late.
Rip Anne. Oh, chapter 4, let's go. We have fucking another
Anne sat on the
chapter.
floor in tears. When Keith, Mithril, and Kat rushed to the scene, Elliot playfully explained the shock was too much for her. Kat started roughing Elliot up, annoyed he'd let Bridget take Shao's wing. However, Elliot held no responsibility, since Bridget and Shao did all the negotiating. Anne stared at her royal medal, questioning why Shao would go that far for her. Even if things hadn't worked out this year, she could have always tried again next year. That's when Keith explained, no, there wouldn't have been. He had already told Shao that if she didn't become a Silver Sugar Master this year, she wouldn't be able to acquire any more silver sugar moving forward. Anne was shocked to learn this. The entire time, she didn't understand anything. Looking for solutions, both Mithril and Keith suggested she go to the Page workshop to talk things out with Bridget, but she was unsure of how she'd get in. So Elliot proposed she work for them as a Silver Sugar Master at the shop, and he might be able to create an opportunity for her to get Shao back. Anne was a little reluctant, knowing Elliot clearly had an ulterior motive in all of this, but she was determined to go wherever Shao was. The night before heading out, Anne stared at her medal, the same medal Shao helped her earn. Then, with a knock at the door, Hugh appeared. Coming on behalf of a request from Kat, Hugh asked Anne if she wanted him to use his authority as Silver Sugar Viscount to retrieve Shao. Kat felt responsible because he led her to the Radcliffe workshop. In her heart, Anne wanted Shao back by her side, but refused Hugh's offer. She wanted to atone for her foolishness on her own. Otherwise, there'd be no point to any of this. She wants to free Shao and rescue him with her own strength. If she didn't, even with the royal medal Shao gave her, she wouldn't be able to proudly declare herself as a Silver Sugar Master. This is when Hugh said, "It's my win," confusing Anne. Turns out, he and Kat made a bet on whether or not she'd use Hugh's Viscount authority, and now that Kat's lost, he'll have to do anything Hugh asks. Anne was so embarrassed they used her situation for a little game. However, he was happy he'd have fun getting to tease his best friend. But on a serious note, he told Anne she needed to spend the coming year establishing herself as a Silver Sugar Master. Otherwise, the people would see it as a fluke. Especially since she was a woman, the eyes of the world would be harsh. In spite of all that, getting Xiao back would be the first step in calling herself a Silver Sugar Master. On the way to the workshop, Elliot whimsically explained, "Traveling alone with a girl sets my heart leaping," completely ignoring Mithril even being there. He then asked Anne if Xiao was her sweetheart, and when she denied it, he called their one-sided love heartbreaking. They first met with Orland Langston, the head of artisans at the Page workshop, who was surprised to learn Anne was a Silver Sugar Master. However,
Okay, so she goes. Guys, I need to go. The mansion will be completed later.